Parallel Universe, Wednesday, April 21st, 2027, inside the C District Security Station of Q City, H Province, Dragon Nation on Pangastar. Where were you on the night of the 19th around 9 p.m.? A security officer asked a young man who appeared to be about 25 years old. At the same time, he was scribbling notes. On the 19th. I remember I was scrolling through Douyin in my rental room. The young man rolled his eyes upward, thought for a moment, and replied calmly. Is there anyone who can testify to that? The officer pressed on. No, I live alone. Have you seen the person in this photo? No, I haven't. The young man remained calm throughout. All right, thank you for your cooperation. If you remember anything, please contact us. The security officer closed the notebook and said to the young man. The summons ended. The young man said, Comrade, thanks for your hard work, turned around, and strode away. The recording officer went to the window watching the young man retreating downstairs and asked the man beside him, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s or 50s who was staring intently downward. Captain, what's wrong with this guy? The captain's brows were furrowed into a deep, Chuan character, and they didn't relax even after the young man disappeared from sight. This guy is a big problem. Where's the problem? The curious officer pressed his senior. The captain didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rested his chin on his hand, looking serious. A few nights ago, a homicide occurred in Ai Kuen residential area. After receiving the report, they rushed to the scene. The scene only had a male corpse lying on the ground. After careful investigation, the victim was 38 years old, a local working as a warehouse manager. There was not much blood on the floor. The forensic doctor preliminarily determined that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, one fatal blow, instantaneous death. The time of death was around 9 p.m. The suspected murder weapon was an axe, hammer, or mallet. It seemed the victim was attacked the moment he opened the door. The perpetrator had strong anti-forensic skills, leaving no clues. According to the victim's family, the cash in the room was intact and no valuables were missing. All signs pointed to a revenge killing. Fortunately, the residential area's security system was good with surveillance cameras at the main entrance and exit. By checking the surveillance footage, they quickly spotted a suspicious man wearing a cap and mask walking out of the neighborhood during the estimated time of the crime. Following day and night surveillance along the route, they finally found the suspicious man entering a rental apartment building. Thus, the earlier scene occurred. They summoned men of matching physique and conditions from the building for investigation. They asked for alibis during the crime time and any possible connection to the victim. The captain recalled the feeling the young man gave him and said slowly, this guy is too indifferent. Oh, Captain, I checked his file. He grew up with his grandparents after his parents divorced. According to the household registration, his grandparents passed away several years ago, and their registration was cancelled. Such a person tends to be somewhat withdrawn. The security officer naturally had investigated the summoned suspect beforehand. They had done their homework. A casual question seemed ordinary, but was actually loaded with known answers. Know your enemy and yourself, and you will be invincible. Moreover, most ordinary people might never step into a security station in their lifetime. Being summoned for the first time inevitably brings some nervousness. Thus, the officer thought the suspect's calmness was due to his personality. No, it's different. His eyes are cold and fierce. If he hasn't killed a few people, I wouldn't believe it. A person's eyes can't be that terrifying. The captain spoke with a grave expression, revealing what he had observed. Although the country was peaceful now, when he was young and just started working, he often encountered desperate and vicious criminals. He had a hunch that this man was the murderer of the 419 Ai Kuen residential area case. But in a society ruled by law, everything required evidence. You can't just handcuff someone based on his intuition. Moreover, there were blind spots along the surveillance route and no complete video chain of evidence. Furthermore, the murderer had disguised himself during the crime. Finally, there was indeed no direct connection between this young man and the victim. This clearly contradicted their revenge-killing hypothesis. Investigate. Keep investigating. Have him tailed. 247. Also check the victim's social media apps to see if he had any illicit relationships. After leaving the station, the young man hailed a taxi on the street. Zhongshan Farmers Market. Sitting in the cab, he frowned and sighed inwardly. He didn't expect the security team to find him after just 2 days. If they gathered more evidence in the next few days, he might end up executed by bullet. He hoped the apocalypse would... Apocalypse. That's right. The young man's name is Xiong Chuomo. 2.5 days ago, he was reborn. And he was reborn 3 days before the apocalypse. In the evening, the district police station's office hall was brightly lit. Captain, we've finished investigating the recent whereabouts of the person you asked us to keep an eye on. Please report your findings. Yes. The man is named Xiong Chuomo. On the day of the incident, the 19th, he asked for leave in the morning and didn't go to work. Through video surveillance and the cash register system, he went alone to nearby supermarkets and wholesale markets buying noodles, instant noodles, bottled water, milk, canned goods, ate treasure porridge, chocolate brown sugar, salt, Red Bull energy drinks, and other food, as well as clothes, pants, shoes, and other daily necessities, and 2 hiking backpacks. The total was 29769 for yuan. Then he went to a pharmacy and bought some vitamins, glucose, alcohol, anti-inflammatory drugs, and some medical gauze. Total 2453 yuan. After that he visited several lottery stations. In the evening he dined at Yulong restaurant, spending 976 yuan. We found no trace of him that night, but shortly before the incident, surveillance outside the rental building captured footage of a masked suspect carrying a travel bag as he left. The officer's voice could not hide his excitement as he spoke. After 2 days and 2 nights of intense work since receiving the report, they were inevitably tired, but now they had finally roughly identified the suspect. All that remained was to gather evidence. Calming down a little, he continued. On the morning of the 20th, he went to a building materials market and bought a security door, 4 small solar panels, and a small angle grinder. Total 4400 yuan. At noon, he spent 480 yuan at Hongfeng restaurant. In the afternoon, he went to Riverside Garden Community and rented apartment 401, building A Unit 3. Then he moved the items he had bought from the rental building to the garden community. In the evening, he appeared at the electronics market and bought 2 of the latest long-wave phones and 4 power banks totaling 14900 yuan. After that, he spent 3980 yuan at a bathhouse. The officer paused briefly. Today, after leaving the police station, he took a taxi to Zhongshan Farmers Market and bought 3 large chopping knives and 4 long-handled wood-chopping axes along with a sheath. Then he went to the fresh meat market and paid a high price to a stall owner for 2 butcher knives and 3 cattle slaughtering knives. Total 3800 yuan. In the evening, he dined at Huiyuan restaurant, swiping his card for 2700 yuan. Then he returned to the rental building. The report is complete. The officer put down his materials and reported to the captain. The other officers present couldn't help, but they really couldn't figure out this person's behavior, involuntarily glancing at the captain, hoping for guidance on the next investigative direction. The captain was also somewhat baffled. Installing a security door worth thousands in a rental. Wouldn't that just benefit the landlord? Buying large quantities of food and medicine. What was he planning to do? Preparing to run away. But with so many things, could he carry them all? Why he bought knives and axes also puzzled him. Generally speaking, if a suspect planned to commit another crime, he should choose weapons that are light, easy to carry, and easy to conceal, such as daggers or short knives. He had never heard of a serial killer openly carrying a bunch of butcher knives to commit murder. Finally, the suspect only earned 400 or 500 yuan a month, yet the most expensive meal he had these days cost 2700 yuan per person. Even the captain himself had never been so extravagant. When they checked his bank balance, they found only a few yuan left, and he even had nearly 100 yuan in loans under his name. Spending nearly 100 yuan in just a few days. All signs indicated a feeling of eating one meal at a time, using up all savings and credit loans. But buying food, knives, and new phones didn't fit that theory. What about the victim Xiao Yan's social media on his phone? Any progress? The captain thought for a moment and decided to start with the motive of vengeance. Through the software company's assistance examining a large number of chat records, it is confirmed that the victim Xiao Yan had improper relationships with multiple women. But none of these women have any connection with the suspect Xiong Chuomo. While that ruled out the possibility of a crime of passion, he even began to doubt whether Xiong Chuomo was really the culprit. Could it be a random murder? The captain's brow furrowed into a deep crease. This case truly baffled him. The fact that no weapon was left at the scene indicated a premeditated murder. Combined with the fact that nothing was stolen and that the victim, a security guard with a sturdy physique, showed no defensive injuries according to the autopsy. People instinctively defend themselves when attacked, inevitably leaving some defensive wounds. All signs pointed to the fact that it was indeed a crime committed by someone known to the victim. Could it be a hired murder? A senior officer said in a deep voice. If it were a hired murder, then the alibis of those previously investigated would no longer hold. It would also explain many doubts. No defensive injuries. Because the murderer was a professional killer. No valuables stolen. Killers don't seek money only to complete the task. Generous spending. They get a generous bonus after completing the job. And the loans. For a killer, isn't that just free money? As soon as these words were spoken, the entire room fell silent. After a while, one of the officers hesitated and asked, "Captain, should we apply for a search warrant?" The captain waved his hand. The surveillance video clearly showed that the suspect had nothing on him when he returned, indicating that the murder weapon might have been disposed of on the way. At present, the motive, weapon, and evidence were all unclear. It would be very difficult to get a vicious criminal to confess based solely on a surveillance video. After all, this video didn't even capture the suspect's real face. It couldn't even be considered evidence. Besides, it was possible that the murderer was a resident of the victim's community. The most important and puzzling point: the suspect Xiong Chuomo had no criminal record. He was too clean. Could such a young man be a professional killer? Thinking about it, he couldn't help shaking his head. But every time he recalled that gloomy gaze, he overturned the idea. But with the current intelligence and evidence, even if they obtained a search warrant and brought him in for questioning, they would have to release him after 24 hours due to insufficient evidence. That would only alert the enemy and do more harm than good. He had a feeling this was a big fish. As long as the suspect didn't plan to flee Q City out of fear, they wouldn't act until they had enough evidence. Captain, there's another strange thing. According to colleagues of the victim Xiao Yan, the key to the warehouse he managed has been lost. The warehouse lock is specially made and can only be opened with a key. There are 2 keys, one on the victim and one with the boss. But their boss has been on a business trip for the past few days. One of the officers reported the information he had gathered. Could the suspect's motive be to use the key to steal the warehouse supplies? After all, such a large warehouse must contain goods worth millions. That's unlikely, another officer retorted. The warehouse is equipped with surveillance and networked alarm systems inside and out. Besides, transporting so many goods requires large vehicles. It's not possible to steal everything with just a key. As a boss, how could he not guard against such an important position as warehouse manager? Who do you think the surveillance is there to protect against? Isn't it to prevent theft from within? The captain clapped his hands to stop all arguments and draw everyone's attention to himself. Keep Xiong Chuomo under close surveillance to prevent him from committing another crime. Also investigate the source and movement of his funds, whether he used large amounts of cash, and check the people he came into contact with before the incident. Tomorrow, screen and check people in the city with criminal records. Next, carefully search along the route to see if the weapon was discarded. Finally, investigate the lost key. Oh, and notify the Vice Squad to check that bathhouse. In the rental room, fruits and vegetables were piled in the corner, and the trash can was full of discarded lottery tickets. On the LCD computer screen, the latest news was playing. Recently, mysterious UFOs have been sighted in many areas. According to the latest statistics, the war between the Eagle Country and the Cat Country has resulted in over 570 soldiers killed. The Elephant Country and the Sheep Country have broken out their 3rd round of local conflicts this year. Xiong Chuomo turned off the computer, checked the doors and windows, the stored supplies, and the weapons he had purchased. After doing all this, he sat on the bed, playing with the special key in his hand, gradually sinking in. In his past life, after the zombie outbreak, he relied on his meager remaining food to hide indoors for nearly 2 days, after which he had no choice but to go out in search of food. Fortunately, he was lucky. The first time he went out, it was uneventful. The number of zombies outside was small, and he harvested quite a lot. But as time passed, the number of zombies gradually increased, and he was eventually forced to relocate. After several twists and turns, he finally ended up under a faction, groveling, humiliating himself, and working like an ox to gain a chance to survive. While on a mission, he was betrayed by a member of his own team and died tragically in the jaws of zombies. And Xiao Yan was one of the members of that team. In the post-apocalyptic world, survivors deprived of entertainment often engaged in conversations with one another. Through such exchanges, he naturally learned about the pre-calamity lives of everyone in his team. Before the apocalypse, Xiao Yan had been a warehouse manager. When the outbreak struck, he relied on the supplies he had stored to live a comfortable life of plenty. That was until the faction he was attached to coveted his provisions and sought to take them by force. Pragmatically, Xiao Yan knelt in surrender, handed over all his supplies in exchange for protection, and secured a position as a squad leader equivalent to his previous role. After being reborn, he naturally made Xiao Yan his first target against those who had wronged him. Xiong Chuomo carefully stowed away the key, took out the angle grinder, replaced the worn grinding disc, and resumed sharpening these weapons. These were the very guarantees of his survival, demanding utmost caution. After some polishing, he swung them a few times to reacquaint himself with the familiar feel of wielding arms from his past lives' memories. Time slipped away unnoticed until dawn. Outside the window, a profound silence reigned, broken only by the occasional noise of a passing car. Then, help, art, piercing screams erupted one after another, rising in a cacophony from the vicinity. Hearing those familiar cries for the second time, the boulder pressing on Xiong Chuomo's heart finally lifted, and he heaved a sigh of relief. The apocalypse had indeed arrived. Just last night, he had been certain that the lottery numbers he had chosen based on his past lives' memory were a sure win, yet not a single number matched. That meant thousands of yuan had gone down the drain. This plunged him into deep doubt. Since the draw was on the 20th, he knew he had little time to claim the prize, and even less time to spend a large sum. So he had aimed for 4th or 5th prizes. But when the results came, none of his numbers matched. He even began to suspect that his memories of the apocalypse were nothing but a nightmare. Unfortunately, there was no turning back. On the very first day of his rebirth, he had killed a man. If the apocalypse did not come, he would be doomed. All he could do was console himself that he had survived the apocalypse for quite some time, and forgetting the winning numbers was entirely possible. Thankfully, the apocalypse arrived as scheduled. He glanced at his phone, 2:34 in the morning. Before long, the screams nearby gradually died down, with only a few distant cries remaining. Only then did he crawl into bed and fall into a deep slumber. The next morning, after a hearty breakfast, he shouldered his hiking backpack, gripped a sharp axe, and tucked a sheathed cleaver into his belt. After checking through the peephole that no zombies were lingering outside, he pressed his ear to the ground, listened carefully, and confirmed that there was no movement around. Then he cautiously opened the door. Zombies had extremely poor vision, almost blind, but their sense of smell and hearing were quite acute. The worst thing one could do when encountering a zombie was to shout or scream. As long as one remained calm and composed, even an unarmed ordinary person could simply create a small noise in the distance to attract the zombie's attention, then slip away unnoticed. Given the supplies Xiong Chuomo had stockpiled in his rented apartment, he could easily hole up there for one. However, the real issue was that the simultaneous global outbreak of the zombie crisis suggested the virus was, moreover, based on his past lives' knowledge, zombies would slowly evolve over time. The early-stage zombies, if one could overcome their psychological barriers and exercise caution, even an ordinary person armed with a long-handled weapon could take down a single zombie. But after a week, an ordinary person facing a zombie would become nothing more than a lamb for slaughter, with the best outcome being a one-for-one trade-off. This meant that zombies could evolve by absorbing the virus from the air. There was no such thing as zombies growing sluggish from hunger due to a lack of food intake. The law of conservation of energy seemed to have no effect on zombies. Judging by the speed of their evolution, humanity had no hope of survival. But as the saying goes, heaven never seals off all exits. Inside a zombie's brain existed a special energy crystal. By absorbing this crystal, one could undergo evolution. At the same time, certain human groups could awaken and evolve unique abilities. In his past life, Xiong Chuomo had awakened the devouring ability. As far as he knew, each person could only awaken one ability. His devouring ability allowed him to consume and absorb the abilities of others for his own use. However, in his previous life before his death, he had only managed to absorb 2 different abilities. Xiong Chuomo cautiously exited his apartment, recalling from his past life that there were only a few zombies near the entrance of his building. With caution, he could handle them alone. He crept down the stairs, hugging the wall, and reached the stairwell without encountering any zombies. He took a deep breath and carefully peered out to survey the surroundings. Damn it! Xiong Chuomo's pupils contracted. On the parking spaces not far ahead, 2 zombies were crouched over a corpse feeding. On the other side, 2 more zombies seemed to be either standing dumbly or standing guard. Near the property management office, 2 zombies in security guard uniforms prowled in the vicinity. If he simply walked out boldly, he would face an assault from 6 zombies. If he were unlucky enough to be scratched or bitten, if the wound was on an arm or leg, immediate amputation could prevent zombification, but if the wound was elsewhere, he was as good as dead. He quietly retreated and looked around. At the stairwell entrance, he spotted 2 dusty old bicycles and a children's toy car. An idea struck him. He silently carried a bicycle to the staircase and placed it horizontally against the handrail, creating a simple barricade. After finishing, Xiong Chuomo lightly tapped the bicycle, producing a crisp clang. Holding his breath and gripping his axe tightly, he fixed his eyes on the stairwell exit. About half a minute passed with no movement. It seemed the tapping was too soft to attract the zombies' attention. As expected, the early-formed zombies were not particularly sharp of hearing or smell. He breathed a silent sigh of relief, and this time struck with a bit more force, producing a louder clang. After the sound, a rustling noise came from not far away. Zombies possessed great strength, but moved slowly. He tightened his grip on the axe and stepped back slightly. In a short while, 4 zombies appeared before Xiong Chuomo. Their exposed skin was a pale gray, and their eyes were a lifeless, fish-belly white. Since they had only recently turned, he could still recognize their pre-zombie features. If his memory served him, they were all tenants from the neighboring building. One of them had always greeted him warmly whenever they passed by. It seemed that even as a zombie, he was still just as enthusiastic. As soon as they spotted him, they let out excited roars and lunged toward him. The once amiable faces were gone, replaced by ghastly, twisted, and terrifying visages that sent chills down one's spine. The uncanny valley effect was at its peak. Anyone seeing a zombie for the first time would likely have their legs turn to jelly, trembling uncontrollably, and be unable to flee. Xiong Chuomo raised his axe, aimed at the head of the nearest zombie, and with a move called splitting the mountain, brought the axe down in one clean stroke. The axe struck the zombie's skull with a dull thud, and the leading zombie collapsed instantly. Viscous green fluid splattered all over the ground. He set down the axe, drew the cleaver from his belt, gripped it with both hands, and executed a move called severing the flow. With a powerful swing, he sliced toward the neck of the second zombie. A grating crunch made one's teeth ache as the zombie's head was severed, and a stream of oily green fluid spurted a foot into the air. A pungent, acrid odor reminiscent of certain flowers immediately filled the stairwell. The headless second zombie slumped to one side and lay still. The remaining two zombies, having lost their companions in mere seconds, knew no fear. They still shambled toward him with guttural roars. Xiong Chuomo retreated a few steps up the stairs, creating some distance. Seizing the moment, he raised his cleaver and traced a beautiful arc, nearly grazing the left ear of the zombie on the right. A single decapitating stroke. Exerting all his strength to slay 3 zombies in succession, Xiong Chuomo felt breathless and depleted. He retreated a few paces to catch his breath. He was but an ordinary laborer in his daily life, with at most average physical fitness. The mere 3 days of training after his rebirth had yielded little improvement. Those few strikes relied entirely on the invaluable experience of killing zombies accumulated in his past life during the apocalypse, allowing for a single lethal blow. Fortunately, before the battle, he had fashioned his bicycle into a makeshift barricade before him, granting him time to recover his stamina. These low-level zombies, utterly devoid of intelligence, would never think to destroy the obstacle before them, their hands merely flailing uselessly. Xiong Chuomo took several deep breaths, recovering a fraction of his strength. Gripping the axe with both hands, he raised it high and brought it down with all his might, finishing off the last zombie. Wiping the sweat from his brow with his sleeve, he gazed at his handiwork without a hint of surprise. As long as one found the weak point, killing a zombie was not difficult. The zombie's vulnerability lay in its head. Only by smashing or severing the head could it be killed. Otherwise, even if you cut it in half or disemboweled it, the zombie would still remain lively. This rendered cold weapons such as crossbows and spears, as well as light firearms, largely ineffective. Using a small caliber pistol, you could empty an entire magazine and still fail to kill a single zombie, while the gunfire would only attract more of them to gather. This was also why Xiong Chuomo favored items like machetes and axes among cold weapons. A saying circulated in the apocalypse against zombies: guns are inferior to knives, knives to hammers, and hammers to axes. What did that mean? The reason a zombie's weak point was its head, and the human skull was the hardest part of the body. Likewise, humans turned into zombies were no different. Guns are inferior to knives was easy to understand. The sound of gunfire easily attracted hordes of zombies, and once you fired, you would face the danger of being surrounded and trapped. Knives are inferior to hammers meant that using a knife came with stricter requirements. It was less convenient than hammers, mallets, or clubs. As ordinary citizens of Longhua, how many were skilled with a blade? In daily life, the most they handled were kitchen knives or fruit knives. Were you planning to chop a zombie's head with a kitchen knife? That would practically put you face-to-face with the zombie. Even if you killed it, you would at best trade one for one, achieving 0 casualty. Hammers are inferior to axes. Using hammers, mallets, or clubs to smash a zombie's head required tremendous strength. But wasn't using an axe different? A single axe blow could split the head open, saving more effort. After selecting the appropriate weapon, one also needed to be steady, accurate, and ruthless when using such weapons to kill zombies. Earlier, when facing the last zombie, if his strength had been insufficient, the axe would not have split the head, but instead gotten lodged in the zombie's skull, putting him in a dilemma. To pull or not to pull. Using a machete to behead a zombie seemed simple, but in reality, it was far from easy. The zombie's arms flailed wildly, and if the timing or angle of the strike was off, it could easily hit an arm. In an unknown fight, had the freshly turned zombie not been sluggish in movement, he would have been killed in that. After finishing off the 4 zombies, Xiong Chuomo did not rush to search for loot. Instead, he took a can of Red Bull energy drink from his backpack, wiped his hands with a tissue, opened the lid, and drank it in one gulp. Though the slain zombies oozed a pool of disgusting green slime, that slime was not infectious. Especially for someone like him who had survived the first wave of zombie outbreak, he had developed a strong resistance to the ubiquitous virus in the air. Even if he now cut an opening on his arm with a knife and exposed the wound to the air, he would not become infected. Even if he smeared zombie slime on the wound, he still would not turn into a zombie. However, doing so brought no benefit. Instead, it would aggravate the wound and cause infection. From all this, it seemed that infection only occurred when scratched or bitten by a zombie. This meant the source of infection lay in the zombie's mouth and claws. After finishing the energy drink and resting a bit to recover some strength, Xiong Chuomo hurled the empty can with force into the distance. The empty can traced an arc and landed on the hard ground, producing a long Kong Lang clatter in the distance. Gripping the axe firmly, he stared straight ahead. Within a few breaths, 2 zombies in security guard uniforms appeared in his view. Xiong Chuomo struck the bicycle crossbar, forcefully producing a dang sound. Hearing the noise, the 2 zombies began to walk slowly toward his position. When they were about 5 or 6 meters away, the guard zombie suddenly, as if catching a scent, emitted a few low wong growls from its throat and charged at him. With a swift motion of the axe, he dispatched the 2 zombies in the same manner. Xiong Chuomo did not rush to search for spoils. Instead, he took a large piece of chocolate from his backpack to replenish energy. He had to maintain full stamina at all times to deal with unforeseen emergencies, and also to guard against any other zombies wandering nearby beyond his sight. Caution is the parent of safety. When his stamina returned to normal, Xiong Chuomo moved the bicycle aside a little, stepped out, used the axe to sever the heads of all the zombies, dragged them back into the stairwell by their hair, repositioned the bicycle, and continued to let it fulfill its duty as a barricade. He took out a fruit knife and began searching inside the zombies' heads. The energy crystal was located at the very center of the zombie's brain, roughly near the pineal gland. Though Xiong Chuomo dispatched each zombie with a single axe blow, searching for the energy crystals was quite time-consuming and laborious. The ones killed by an axe were manageable, but the heads severed by a knife were no less difficult to search than prying open a turtle shell. After spending considerable time meticulously probing with all efforts combined, he had killed 6 zombies and found a total of 2 energy crystals. Staring at the 2 mustard yellow soybeans-sized irregular level 1 energy crystals in his palm, Xiong Chuomo couldn't help the upward curl of his lips. It was worth noting that the zombies formed at the very beginning, if classified by rank, were all unranked level 0 zombies. Level 0 zombies had not yet formed crystals in their heads. The lowest crystal rank was level 1. Only when they evolved into level 1 zombies would crystals be dropped. But nothing was absolute. Based on the drop rate of killing zombies in his past life, to obtain a crystal 1 level higher, one would need to kill dozens or even hundreds of zombies just for a single one, with a probability of about 2 to 1. Now killing 6 and obtaining 2 gave a drop rate of roughly 30. As long as he acquired 8 more level 1 crystals and absorbed them all, his body would evolve and become a level 1 superhuman. After wiping them with a tissue without a moment's hesitation, he tossed the 2 energy crystals directly into his mouth. When the energy crystals lay in his palm, they felt as hard as iron. But once swallowed, the crystals transformed into streams of warmth, wandering continuously inside his body, as if after a long drought rain had finally come. Like a fish in water, an indescribable pleasure. The warm sensation lasted only about half a minute before dissipating. Xiong Chuomo shivered comfortably. Clenching his fists, he felt a significant increase in strength. If he were to do it again, he believed he could kill 4 zombies in a row without pausing. Nor did Xiong Chuomo neglect the remaining 6 headless bodies. He carefully searched their pockets and soon fished out 4 keys, 2 lighters, 4 electric bike keys, 2 open packs of cigarettes, 6 phones, and 146 yuan in Longwa currency. He scanned the 6 phones one by one, turned them all off, and placed them together with 2 of the keys and the lighters into his backpack. He didn't want some random call to come in at a critical moment. Currently, while the signal and network were still functioning, the phones were quite useful. As for the lock screen passwords, he could just factory reset them directly. The phone numbers. Simple. After resetting, call his own number and check the caller ID. The rest of the items were discarded as trash. After finishing all this and finding no more zombies, Xiong Chuomo cautiously walked out of the stairwell. Unlike yesterday's bright sunshine and clear skies, the sky, as far as the eye could see, was a massive dark expanse with no sunlight penetrating through. With a bang, he kicked open the door to room 307, swiftly killed the male zombie that lunged at him, switched to a fruit knife, and with a deft scoop an energy crystal was easily secured. Xiong Chuomo quickly scanned the surroundings, and upon spotting no zombies, he dashed toward the property management office. The office was relatively close to the street. Fortunately, the door was unlocked. He entered the office as quietly and stealthily as possible, then locked the door behind him. The office was small, only about 10 square meters, with 3 chairs and a desk occupying nearly half the space. Several uncollected parcels were haphazardly piled on the desk. Xiong Chuomo's gaze didn't linger on them. Instead, he focused on the corner. Their 2 sets of security gear were a PC riot shield, stab-resistant vest, and a plastic baton. He put down his backpack, put on the vest, and donned the shield. With these 2 pieces of equipment, his safety factor against these low-level zombies was undoubtedly greatly enhanced. He stepped out of the office onto the street. A cool breeze blew from east to west across the deserted street. Xiong Chuomo held his breath, moving against the breeze, creeping quickly toward the 5 zombies on the eastern street. 3 were closer, while the other 2 were a bit farther away, allowing him to exploit the time gap and take them all out at once. When he approached within 3 or 4 meters of the zombies, the previously aimlessly wandering zombies instantly turned their bodies toward him in unison and lunged at him with roars. Xiong Chuomo remained calm. He swung his axe, delivering a home run that split the skull of the nearest zombie. Without pausing, he raised the axe above his head and brought it down in a cleaving Mount Hua strike, killing the second zombie. By now, the third zombie was right in front of him. Xiong Chuomo showed no panic, stepping forward instead of back. He crouched, thrusting his riot shield forcefully into the zombie, then brought his axe down to send it to join its 2 brothers. It took less than 10 seconds to finish off these 3 zombies. The 2 that were farther away followed suit, advancing one after another like the Calabash brothers rushing to rescue their grandfather. Xiong Chuomo felt rather puzzled. Just now when he approached within a few meters, the zombies suddenly seemed to be able to sense him. He believed his footsteps were light enough that these level 0 zombies shouldn't be able to detect them. Moreover, since he was moving against the wind, the scent of a living person should be undetectable to the upwind zombies. This meant that zombies probably didn't rely solely on smell and hearing to track prey. Perhaps like cold-blooded animals, they had thermal sensing. After all, a zombie was just a cold corpse. This thought flashed through his mind. In the distance, 2 or 3 zombies hadn't noticed the commotion. Xiong Chuomo looked around. For now it was safe, so he switched to a fruit knife and began searching. To his disappointment, after searching all of them, there wasn't a single one. He raised an eyebrow. In theory, this drop rate was actually normal. In his previous life, Xiong Chuomo had hidden indoors during the initial period and didn't know that killing zombies could yield energy crystals. By the time he realized it, all the zombies had evolved into level 1 zombies. After killing them, each head contained a level 1 crystal, and only very rarely could a level 2 crystal be obtained. But what about his earlier 30 drop rate? Xiong Chuomo recalled the difference between the 2 groups of zombies he had killed, and gradually a realization dawned on him. However, he needed to test it further. He picked up a phone from a zombie's pocket and threw it forcefully toward the distant zombies. After throwing 4 phones in a row, 3 zombies were attracted to him. He dispatched them easily in a few moves. As expected, not a single crystal. All the zombies on this street had been cleared by him. 2 choices lay before him: leave along the way to join the main street and kill zombies, or stay and continue. Going out to kill zombies carried a high risk and great difficulty. With his current equipment and strength, he could at most handle 3 zombies at once. If he accidentally got surrounded by multiple zombies, even as a reincarnator, he would meet his end again. Xiong Chuomo thought for a moment, weighed the pros and cons, and finally decided to first clear the nearby building. The ubiquitous zombie virus in the air didn't just infect humans and turn them into zombies. All mammals on Pangastar were susceptible and would become zombies as well. Interestingly, creatures such as cockroaches, mosquitoes, ants, chickens, ducks, snakes, birds, and the like were not infected during the first zombie outbreak at 230 m. on the 22nd. However, that didn't mean they were immune to the zombie virus. If scratched or bitten by a zombie, they would also. Of course, for creatures as small as mosquitoes or ants, being scratched or bitten wasn't a concern. Xiong Chuomo might face 3 human zombies without fear, but if faced with an equal number of zombie dogs, zombie cats, or even zombie bats, the outcome would be uncertain. The place he lived was in an urban village where most residents were migrant workers like him. Of course, there were also many white-collar elites who chose the location for its proximity to their companies. Most people living here were busy making a living and rarely kept pets. Besides, the landlord didn't allow it. For him, choosing this area undoubtedly meant higher safety. Apart from that, the most important reason he stayed was to verify a hypothesis in his mind. In addition to the security gear, the property office also had many tools such as wrenches, screwdrivers, and crowbars. Xiong Chuomo went back again and picked up a crowbar to carry with him. He fished 2 keys out of his backpack and put them in his pocket, then walked slowly toward the next building. As he passed the parking spaces, he saw the half-eaten remains that had been gnawed on by 2 zombies earlier. The corpse was lying face down, its arms, thighs, and back almost entirely devoured, exposing stark, white bones. A truly gruesome sight. As soon as he approached, a stench like dead rats mixed with a septic tank hit him. He couldn't help but furrow his brow. Normally, a corpse would take 1 or 2 days to start smelling, but bodies eaten by zombies accelerated this process, emitting an unbearable odor in just an hour or 2. After being scratched or bitten by initially formed zombies, it took 12 to 18 hours to become infected and transform. This unfortunate fellow had probably died from excessive blood loss. Xiong Chuomo thought for a moment and decided to chop off the corpse's left ankle with his axe. That way, even if it turned into a zombie, it would be easier to handle. He would keep it for loot. He entered the next building. Each building here had 7 floors, and each housed no fewer than 100 people. If not for fire safety regulations, the number could have doubled. Xiong Chuomo planned to explore from the top floor down, floor by floor. Low-level zombies were brainless creatures that couldn't climb stairs. They would lose their footing and tumble down after a few steps. So in the stairwell, there was no need to worry about being ambushed by zombies. On each floor of the building, there was a long corridor that could be seen from end to end. He climbed all the way to the 7th floor without even getting out of breath. Admittedly, his physical condition was much stronger than before. Though Xiong Chuomo felt somewhat helpless about the arrival of the apocalypse, fortunately, the zombie outbreak had occurred in the early hours. At that time, aside from a very few, most people were resting and sleeping at home. Otherwise, given the population of the Longua, if the zombie crisis had broken out during the day, fewer than 1 in 100 would likely have survived. Even in the countryside far from cities and sparsely populated, some zombie cats, dogs, and rats were not something ordinary households could easily handle. Arriving at room 701, he gently tapped on the door and strained his ears only to hear faint rustling sounds from within. Xiong Chuomo knocked again, tentatively calling out, "Is anyone there?" Receiving no response, he assumed the occupant had turned into a zombie. Without further hesitation, Xiong Chuomo inserted the crowbar into the gap near the lock, levering it with force. The cheap rental door instantly warped. This kind of flimsy interior door could be kicked open even with a foot, classic security theater deterring only the honest. Since all doors here opened inward, there was no fear of a zombie ambush the moment the door was forced. Moreover, zombies drawn by the scent of living humans would instinctively press against the door. Even if the lock broke, one couldn't enter without pushing hard inward. Xiong Chuomo raised his axe, gripped his riot shield, and kicked the door open with a powerful thrust. A female zombie in a bear-patterned pajama who had been leaning against the door was knocked back 2 meters by the sudden impact. Another female zombie in a blue cartoon pajama, taking advantage of the open door, lunged at him with a snarl. Xiong Chuomo swung his axe precisely at the zombie's head, ending it instantly. The second zombie was also dispatched with ease. He paused at the doorway for a while, and when there was no further movement, he stepped inside. The loud sound of the kick echoed through the 10-square-meter room. If there were other zombies, they would have certainly noticed. This appeared to be a double occupancy rental. Xiong Chuomo searched as usual, but found no energy crystals. This further solidified his suspicion. This time he no longer recklessly ransacked rooms, but methodically checked them one by one, until he reached room 712. This room was different. As soon as he approached, an unbearable stench seeped through the door crack. Xiong Chuomo followed the same procedure: first knock, then press his ear to the door to listen, and finally begin prying it open. Kicking the door open, he ignored the foul odor and strode into the room, striking down a naked female zombie with a single axe blow. The most striking sight was a naked male corpse lying supine on a double bed, a large brown stain deeply soaked into the mattress. The source of the intense stench was this mutilated body. Xiong Chuomo took out a fruit knife and began rummaging through the zombie's skull. Before long, a yellow crystal appeared in his palm. Clutching the crystal, his heart surged with uncontrollable excitement. This confirmed his theory. Currently, only by killing a level 0 zombie that had devoured life and flesh could a level 1 energy crystal form in its head. Following this path, becoming a superhuman was within reach. Just as Xiong Chuomo was about to toss the crystal into his mouth, the door of room 713 creaked open. Startled, he pocketed the crystal, picked up his shield, and quickly stepped out. "What do you want?" The speaker was a man in his 30s of medium build, wearing black-rimmed glasses. Seeing the weapon in Xiong Chuomo's hand, he instinctively stepped back and asked hastily. Xiong Chuomo took a step back to maintain a safe distance, unsure whether room 713 held any other occupants. Humans were far more dangerous than mindless zombies. "I'm from the next building scavenging for supplies," Xiong Chuomo explained briefly. The man's audacity surprised him. Given the gruesome scene in room 712, even if the neighbor had slept deeply, he should have known what was happening next door. Opening the door voluntarily under such unknown circumstances indicated either foolishness or confidence in some backing. Has the apocalypse truly arrived? The man looked at Xiong Chuomo with a complex expression. "Haven't you seen the news online?" On international social platforms, a video timestamped 1442 on April 21st showed an Akoligan man in a distant continent popping zombies one by one with a shotgun, garnering over 1 billion views and going viral. Since the zombie outbreak occurred in Longwa's early morning, that meant it was broad daylight across the ocean. All short videos on social platforms now featured zombies. Every video and comment carried panic and despair. The man swallowed hard, nodded with difficulty, and stared at the crowbar. "Where did you get those weapons?" Xiong Chuomo followed his gaze and noticed the man's focus on the crowbar, understanding dawning on him. He guessed the man had opened the door to avoid being broken in, but it was also a gamble. If the neighbor next door was killed by zombies, he could scavenge the spoils. Xiong Chuomo thought for a moment and said, "I found them in the property management office. There's a riot shield too. If you go down now, it might still be there. I came up by a staircase too. It was safe all the way." The man gave Xiong Chuomo a long look, thanked him, and walked past him down the stairs without closing his door. Once the man was out of sight, Xiong Chuomo entered room 713 and scanned it to avoid being caught in a pincer. Confirming the man lived alone, he finally relaxed. In his past life, he had been the most insignificant bottom feeder. How could a minnow survive the brutal apocalypse? There were only 2 answers: cling to a powerful backer or band together, help each other, and huddle for warmth. Having lived a second life, he deeply understood that one person's strength was trivial. Only by building his own team and sticking together could he endure the cruel apocalypse. The man was bold and cautious. If possible, he might become an extra ally. Re-entering room 712, Xiong Chuomo chopped off the male corpse's head. Now that he knew the pattern of energy crystal formation, there was no need to leave variables. He took out the energy crystal and swallowed it. The energy flowed through his limbs, cleansing his fatigue, leaving him refreshed and full of strength. Only room 712 on the 7th floor had any stench. Finished, he didn't linger and headed downstairs. Repeating the process, he cleared the 6th floor, obtaining 2 more energy crystals. Having consumed 5 crystals so far, he needed 5 more to become a level 1 superhuman. Arriving at the stinking room 504, he knocked and pressed his ear to the door as before. This time, unlike the previous 3, he heard no rustling. The room was deathly silent. His expression turned serious. While prying the door, Xiong Chuomo kept his hand on the handle. When the lock mechanism was deformed, he set down the axe and switched to a machete. He didn't kick the door directly this time. Instead, he placed the riot shield upright on the floor and opened the door just a crack. Suddenly, a black shadow shot through the gap, slamming into the shield. The tremendous impact nearly knocked him over, but he held firm, prepared for it. The shadow paused upon hitting the shield. Now, gripping the machete, he swung with all his might at the door. With a squelching sound, the shadow was cleaved in two at the waist, and copious amounts of a nauseating viscous green liquid gushed from the severed area. Xiong Chuomo did not hesitate, and continued to hack toward the head of the upper half. Only when the shadow's head was separated from its body did he finally get a clear look. It was a black cat zombie. Zombies possessed immense strength and moved slowly, but zombie cats were an aberration. Not only were they powerful, but their speed also surpassed that of many zombies, with combat prowess rivaling that of a level 1 zombie. Aside from relatively weak defenses, they had no obvious shortcomings. If it weren't for the riot shield, he wouldn't have bothered to pry open that door. One stroke of bad luck could easily cost him an arm or a leg. Xiong Chuomo sheathed his machete, switched to an axe, and entered the room. There a female corpse lay prostrate under the bed, her shoulder and neck a bloody mess with a large patch of dark red bloodstains on the surrounding floor. From the scene, it was easy to deduce that the woman had been attacked by her zombie pet cat in the dead of night, and had collapsed dead after only a few steps in her attempt to flee. Xiong Chuomo strode over in 2 or 3 steps, delivered a finishing blow with the axe, and after clearing the potential threat, he returned to collect the spoils. Gazing at the light red symmetrical crystal core extracted from the zombie cat's head, he felt an irrepressible surge of excitement in his heart. Slaying a zombie yielded 2 types of energy crystals. One was an irregular earthy yellow crystal that enhanced all-around physical fitness with a 100 drop rate. The other was the red ability crystal in his hand, which served to elevate the user's ability level. Such ability crystals could only be obtained by killing mutated zombies. The drop rate from ordinary zombies was even less than 1 in 1,000. Since the outbreak of the apocalypse, surviving creatures had a chance to spontaneously awaken abilities, though such cases were rare, roughly 1 in 5, a probability of about 20. The awakened abilities were not only diverse and varied in type and form, but also differed in the timing of. For instance, with the same lightning attribute ability, some chosen ones awakened on the very first day, while others took 6 or 7 days. Awakening 1 day earlier meant an extra chance at survival. In his past life, his ability hadn't awakened until the 9th day, relegating him to the lowest rung. Once an ability awakened, it was deemed level 1. With a level 1 ability against level 0 zombies, he could at least ensure his own safety, if nothing else. Some wielders of powerful abilities could even slaughter level 1 zombies with ease. If one was unlucky and failed to spontaneously awaken an ability, there was no need to panic. Consuming a single level 1 ability crystal would trigger the awakening. Thus its preciousness was evident. At the same time, the greatest use of ability crystals was to advance ability levels. A level 1 awakener needed only 10 level 1 ability crystals to ascend to level 2. After a brief moment of contemplation, Xiong Chuomo ultimately pocketed the crystal, abandoning the idea of consuming it. The devouring ability he had awakened in his past life, though weak and impractical in its early stages, held boundless potential once its level was raised. But now he wasn't sure whether consuming the crystal would allow him to awaken the same ability as in his past life. He didn't want to gamble. After all, he only needed 4 more level 1 energy crystals to advance to a level 1 superhuman, which was enough for self-preservation for now. As Xiong Chuomo stepped out of the room, he heard rhythmic footsteps coming from the staircase and paused to observe. The footsteps drew closer, and soon a man reached the 5th floor. It was the resident of room 713. Apart from a riot shield, he carried a small box of snacks and a sledgehammer. Judging by the box's packaging, it was a delivery parcel. "Looks like you've had a good haul," Xiong Chuomo greeted him. The man shot him a probing look and said, "I've got quite a bit here, can't finish it all alone. He'll share some with you." "No need. It's only the first day, food is everywhere to be scavenged. I can find my own." The man opened his mouth as if to say something, but ultimately remained silent and turned to head upstairs. Xiong Chuomo watched him leave, then turned his attention back to searching for new targets. It wasn't that he didn't want to form a team, but he wasn't about to take in just anyone, especially in the early stages of entrepreneurship, where finding the right partner was crucial. For now, the number and strength of zombies were still low, and he could handle things alone. Adopting a mindset of rather have none than be mediocre, he didn't actively recruit. With a bang, he kicked open the door to room 307, swiftly killed the male zombie that lunged at him, switched to a fruit knife, and with a deft scoop and energy crystal, was easily secured. The sequence of killing, switching blades, and digging was executed with fluid precision. One more to go. He sensed the changes in his body, feeling an approaching threshold. Having cleared the targets on the 4th floor, Xiong Chuomo took out a key and opened the door to room 303. This key was from a familiar zombie he had killed earlier that morning. One of them lived in room 303, the other in room 206. Absorbing 9 level 1 energy crystals had comprehensively enhanced his physical condition, but also brought a side effect. His stomach felt hungry much faster. He urgently needed to replenish a large amount of nutrition. Luckily, the vacant room 303 could serve as a temporary resting place. He took 2 cartons of milk from his backpack, gulped them down in one go, then ate a self-heating hot pot, and the remaining half a chocolate bar, recovering much of his strength. After a short rest, he got up and continued working. Time was life. In a week, all zombies would evolve into level 1 zombies. For now, it really felt like a newbie protection period. He had to use this time to boost his strength as much as. By around noon, Xiong Chuomo had cleared all the targets in the entire building, netting another 5 energy crystals. He didn't consume them immediately. The process of an ordinary human evolving into a superhuman took about 2 hours, during which he would be unable to move. He returned to his rented room, locked the door securely, picked up 1 crystal, and placed it in his mouth. When the 10th crystal was swallowed, unlike the previous 9, this one felt like a key, unlocking the shackles that bound the beauties' latent potential. Xiong Chuomo felt an intense heat throughout his body, as if he had become a furnace with a raging fire burning inside him. An indescribable agony. Having experienced it once in his past life, this was merely a reenactment for him. Time passed imperceptibly. When Xiong Chuomo opened his eyes again, he felt an unparalleled clarity and penetration, as though everything around him had become different. He stood up and stretched a little. His strength, speed, and reflexes had all greatly improved. This was evolution to a higher level of life. With his current strength, he could easily handle 3 or 4 ordinary adults. If measured by the standards of online cultivation novels, he was currently at the first layer of the chi refining stage. After taking a refreshing shower and enjoying a hearty lunch, the time came to 3:00 p.m. There were still 3 hours until nightfall. He continued clearing the nearby apartment buildings. Since his power had advanced to the level of a first-grade superhuman, the most noticeable improvement was his efficiency. Knocking on doors, prying them open, killing, and collecting. The entire process took less than a minute. It took only an hour to clear all the apartment buildings, yielding a total of 25 energy crystals. Adding the 4 he had before, he now possessed 29 first-grade energy crystals and 1 first-grade ability core. A bountiful harvest. 2 hours remained before sunset. Once the sun set, the entire city would be plunged into darkness. Xiong Chuomo carefully analyzed the situation and made detailed plans for his next move. Since 0-grade zombies could only produce energy crystals by killing and devouring life, and because the outbreak had occurred in the early morning when most people were sleeping at home, this greatly limited the zombies' carnage. Following this line of thought, his next target should be places with high population density. For example, families of 3 dormitories, night markets. These places shared a common trait: relatively confined spaces. If even one person turned into a zombie, it was difficult for the others to escape. Thus, hospitals, student dormitories, employee dormitories, shared apartments, nightclubs, hotels, and bustling streets were all viable targets. The only place he could visit within 2 hours was the rental apartment building 2 streets away. Having made up his mind, Xiong Chuomo prepared 2 bottles of glucose water, strapped them on his back, and set off lightly toward his destination. Should I find a way to get a car first? Xiong Chuomo pondered. Unfortunately, car owners usually had decent living conditions, and with his meager tools, forcing a car door open was nothing short of impossible. There were plenty of electric scooters, but riding them on the road was too unsafe, so he gave up on that idea. Compared to the bustling scene of yesterday with people and vehicles, the street was now dead silent. Xiong Chuomo walked down the wide road, staying alert for sneak attacks from zombie animals. Along the way, he casually killed over 30 zombies, but only obtained 1 energy crystal, proving that the drop rate was pitifully low. To evolve into a first-grade superhuman by killing ordinary 0-grade zombies, he would need to slay at least 400 or 500. This stark contrast highlighted the importance of knowing the right information and methods. Arriving at the rental building, he found the doors to be of decent quality. Moreover, he wasn't sure how many tenants in this building kept pets. After an hour, he had only cleared 3 floors, obtaining a mere 7 crystals, far less efficient than before. He glanced at the time, 5:27 p.m. Time to retreat. The night was far more dangerous than the day. Even someone as pressed for time as he was had to head back early. Returning to his room, he tallied the day's spoils. 36 first-grade energy crystals, 1 first-grade ability core, Throughout his entire cleaning process today, aside from the man in room 713 he encountered at the beginning, he hadn't met any other living person. This didn't mean that everyone except the two of them had turned into zombies. Rather, the survivors didn't dare to step outside. Just like his previous life, unless absolutely necessary, they would only huddle in their rooms. Moreover, on the first day with the situation unclear, most families had some food stocked, so there was no need to go out. He turned on his phone to browse the latest information. A short video with over 80 million views had gone viral. The title read, "Zombies are nothing. Watch me crush them with one hand." Curious, he clicked in. The video showed a burly young man killing a zombie with a single swing of a The content was unremarkable. The reason for its high view count was that it was uploaded at 8:42 a.m., making it one of the earliest videos to be posted. By now, everyone had emerged from their initial despair. The unknown was the most terrifying. Once people fully accepted the reality, they began to research ways to deal with the zombies. He continued scrolling. A video titled, "I Feel Something Different About My Body." In it, a slender, scholarly young man about his age punched a wall, cracking the plaster. "Damn. Did you train, bro? That punch is just average. If you cross me, you'd be begging me not to die in under 3 seconds, dog emoji. Can you explain what's going on?" Xiong Chuomo was rather surprised. The video was uploaded at 10:56 a.m. He hadn't expected a chosen one to awaken an ability so quickly. This ability was a body-strengthening one. Even an ordinary person wielding it could display strength comparable to, or even surpassing, that of a second-grade superhuman, a top-tier ability. Especially awakening on the first day of the apocalypse, fighting zero-grade zombies was like a father beating a son. He continued browsing. Aside from a few articles analyzing zombie weaknesses and speculating about the sudden global outbreak of the zombie virus, the rest were national news. The official Dragon Country media urged citizens to stock up on food, stay indoors as much as possible, and promised that professionals would clear out the zombies. They also suggested reporting individual situations to facilitate counting survivors and distributing supplies. Xiong Chuomo's heart sank. Everyone had underestimated this crisis, thinking zombies were just that. Nothing special. In his previous life, he had thought the same. They believed the disaster would end soon. Zombies had little intelligence. By making some noise to lure them to a slaughterhouse and using large-scale weapons, they could easily wipe out huge numbers. Given humanity's current level of technology, it wouldn't take long to restore life to normal. But no one could have imagined that after 7 days, all zombies would evolve into first-grade zombies. It was then that the apocalypse would bare its fangs. 21 days later, zombies would evolve again into second-grade zombies. Their evolution was too fast. Humanity's technological advantage would gradually wane against them. At the same time, the rise of ability users accelerated the collapse of social order. The law of the jungle, where the strong prey on the weak, would gradually take over. The survival environment would be extremely harsh. Under such extreme conditions, he estimated that within a year, all humans on Panga Planet would be extinct. This was not alarmist. It was entirely predictable. Xiong Chuomo thought about it and felt he should do something. His current strength already put him ahead of others. With his foreknowledge, he had a clear goal for future development. Moreover, he hoped for more human survivors and fewer zombies. It was like running a business. Only when the commercial street thrives can everyone make a living. He took out the phones he had collected, formatted the data, and using a stranger's SIM card registered a new account. Has anyone seen the movie The King of Hell Has Arrived? I feel like I'm just like the protagonist. Last night, I dreamed that the world fell into a zombie apocalypse. At first, the zombies moved slowly and had obvious weaknesses. But after a week, they evolved collectively. Speed drastically increased, strength and defense improved, and some zombies couldn't even be pierced by bullets. Streets gradually filled with countless zombies. Rescue workers began to suffer massive casualties. The situation took a turn for the worse. The apocalypse had arrived. Just then, I was jolted awake by nearby screams. To my shock, the zombie apocalypse had really happened in the real world, a nightmare come true. I don't think it was just a dream. It felt more like a prophecy. After finishing his edit, Xiong Chuomo tapped confirm and sent it out, then let out a long sigh. According to the population statistics of his previous life, during the first wave of the zombie outbreak, only about 40 of the people survived. Less than half. 7 days later, the remaining number was nearly halved again. In just over 10 days, only 20 of the population remained. What did that mean? In the 10-odd days following the apocalypse, 80 of the population perished. And he himself had only survived until the 47th day? Although his death was caused by human treachery, the overwhelming individual strength of the zombies and their despair-inducing numbers had cast an inescapable shadow over his heart. After posting that thread, Xiong Chuomo picked up the angle grinder, replaced the grinding wheel, and sharpened his blade. Meanwhile, his phone kept chiming with notifications. When he picked it up, there were over 99 unread messages. In just 10 minutes, the post had garnered over 3 million views, and every refresh showed an increase of tens of thousands. It made sense. Most people stayed indoors, and besides scrolling through their phones, there wasn't much else to do. Hope you don't scare me, tell me this isn't true. Just attention-seeking anyone can be a Monday morning quarterback. What good does the apocalypse do you? This person is disturbing public order and spreading panic. Deserving of execution, I suggest immediate shooting. OP, since your dream mentioned that zombies will evolve collectively, in 7 days something major should happen during that time. If you can predict a few things, I'll believe you. The comments were mostly filled with panic complaints and skepticism. A minority sought more useful information. Xiong Chuomo thought for a moment and replied, in 2 days most of the Dragon Kingdom will experience a power outage turning into intermittent power supply. That doesn't count. Anything else? See, I told you OP was just attention-seeking. OP, a power outage is inevitable. Anyone with basic intelligence can figure that out. Most of our Dragon Kingdom's electricity comes from thermal power, which requires manual operation. Now that zombies are everywhere, who the hell would still go to work? Isn't a power outage perfectly normal? Xiong Chuomo continued replying, tomorrow afternoon the nuclear power plant in the 8-Bash country will explode. Starting the day after tomorrow, more and more people will awaken with special abilities. After the zombies evolve, there will be energy crystals in their heads that can be consumed to strengthen the body. I suggest everyone try to overcome their fear, learn how to kill zombies, and protect yourselves. After posting, Xiong Chuomo turned off his phone, removed the SIM card, and threw it out the window to prevent tracking and avoid unnecessary trouble. Today the Dragon Kingdom would shut down all its nuclear power plants. And because the 8-Bash country neglected its responsibilities, tomorrow's explosion news would be impossible to cover up. By then his post would be considered a successful prophecy, and the registered account would become a target. He checked the time, 6 to 8 p.m. Though he couldn't go outside for the remaining time, he didn't idle. He exercised in the cramped indoor space, pushing his own limits. The next morning, after a hearty breakfast, and stocking up on food, Xiong Chuomo planned to head to E Street. There were several large KTVs there, as well as many internet cafes and hotels nearby. The number of zombies there was definitely not small. He wouldn't have dared to go there if he hadn't already evolved into a superhuman. Another reason was that it was easy to find a vehicle in that area. As soon as he reached the ground floor, he startled a zombie. The startled zombie limped toward him with a wobbling gait. Looking at its comical movements, he realized it was the corpse whose left ankle he had severed yesterday. It had turned. He put it out of its misery with one axe blow, but no energy crystal emerged. Stepping outside, he looked up at the sky. The weather was slightly better than yesterday, the surrounding fog had thinned, and the view was clearer. Xiong Chuomo walked along the road toward E Street. It was quite far from his apartment building. On foot it would take an hour and a half. As expected of a main road, the number of zombies on the street was several times higher than on ordinary streets, and he could even see many zombie dogs wandering around. Gazing at the 3 zombie dogs gathered ahead to his side, Xiong Chuomo couldn't help but frown. If there were only 2, he was confident he could handle them. But facing 3 at once, even with his level 1 superhuman strength, he found it troublesome. Yet he had no choice but to confront them. If he detoured, any unexpected danger ahead would leave him without an escape route. Xiong Chuomo stepped back a good distance, took 2 cans of Red Bull from his backpack, and downed them. He was waiting for an opportunity when one zombie dog would separate from the group. Low-level zombies had no intelligence, they only wandered near the same spot. On such a wide road, their clustering was merely a coincidence. After about 4 minutes, one zombie dog left the pack. Xiong Chuomo judged the distance and threw an empty can. The sound of the can hitting the ground alarmed all 3 dogs, and they all came running. He hadn't expected the zombie dogs' hearing to be far sharper than other zombies. He had only planned to lure 2 of them. However, the timing was still decent. One of the dogs was a distance behind the other 2. He could exploit that time gap. As long as he didn't face all 3 at once, it would be manageable. Against zombie dogs, an axe wasn't ideal. He needed a machete. Xiong Chuomo put down the axe, drew the machete, held up the riot shield, crouched low, and charged toward the 2 dogs. He swiped his right hand toward the neck of one dog, while using his left hand to block the impact of the other. A flash of steel, and the dog's head was severed. At that moment, the 3rd dog finally arrived late to the scene. Xiong Chuomo stepped back, slashed at the waist of the 2nd dog, cutting it in 2, then retreated a few more steps. Though the lower half was missing, the zombie dog wasn't dead, but it couldn't charge anymore. The few steps head created left him only one last opponent. With a swift stroke, he killed the remaining dog. No crystal was rewarded. He was already used to that. Sheathing his blade, he continued forward. Along the way, he had slaughtered no less than 60 zombies and harvested 3 energy crystals. Something was wrong. Too few. The number of energy crystals was far too small. On this stretch, he saw many zombies whose bodies had been gnawed and were missing limbs. Clearly second-generation zombies that had turned from corpses. Given the number of turned zombies after killing them, the energy crystals dropped should have been no less than 10. The numbers didn't match at all. Of course, it was possible that some of these zombies had wandered elsewhere for some reason. After all, zombies had legs. They wouldn't stay in one place forever. Continuing along the street, he stared at the skeleton before him. Xiong Chuomo's brows tightened, and his heart. This was already the fourth skeleton he had discovered on this road. Zombies never scavenged corpses. Most zombies that could turn had varying degrees of missing flesh, even missing arms or legs. The only things that could eat a corpse down to bare bones, preventing it from turning, were probably small animals. Zombie rats. The thought made his heart clench. He had to pick up the pace. The zombies initially formed retained their pre-life habits and instincts. For instance, creatures like bats and rats were rarely seen during the day. They only emerged in groups to forage at night. Otherwise, in his past life, unarmed as he was, he would not have survived 3 days. Of course, this nocturnal behavior only lasted for 7 days. Once they evolved into level 1 zombies, they gradually became visible both day and night. Faced with a horde of foraging zombie rats, ordinary superpowered individuals were no longer sufficient. Powerful abilities were required. After nearly 2 hours, he finally arrived at Delong KTV. Xiong Chuomo checked the time, 10:11 a.m. This KTV was somewhat well known, even in Q City. Covering a full 3 hectares, just the land itself was worth a considerable amount. He had his reasons for choosing this KTV. Although Delong KTV was not the largest entertainment venue in Q City, it was the nearest to him and the most lavishly decorated. However, it was his first time visiting such a high-end establishment. Xiong Chuomo did not rush to enter. Instead, he circled around the perimeter. He was still perturbed by the previously disappeared zombies. If one were to ask him where these zombies had gone, the KTV before him seemed like a decent hunting ground for them. Xiong Chuomo eliminated a few scattered zombies in the vicinity, but they did not drop any crystals, indicating they were not the ones he was looking for. The environment inside the KTV was cramped and labyrinthine, with an unknown number of zombies. Moreover, he had never been there before, placing him at a distinct disadvantage. After a moment's thought, he took 2 other people's phones from his backpack, stepped over several off-road vehicles parked in front of the main entrance, positioned himself at the entrance of the first-floor hall, and a short distance outside, pressed and held the power button to turn them on, then quickly retreated. Reaching a safe area, he took out his own long-way phone, which he had set to silent mode, and made a call. The ringtone of the incoming call echoed throughout the lobby. After 3 consecutive calls, nearly 20 zombies appeared within his sight. Only 17. Not many at all. With his level 1 superpowered strength, as long as he was not surrounded by a large number of zombies, he would be safe at least. He had thought a dense mass would emerge, but unexpectedly, there were only so few. Not enough to even wait. Considering the good soundproofing inside the KTV, he dialed another phone number to lure the zombies outside to a more open space. The zombies, attracted by the ringtone, emerged from the lobby and soon scattered. He effortlessly cleared them out, harvesting a total of 4 energy crystals. He had indeed come to the right place. If nothing unexpected happened, he would be able to advance to a level 2 superpowered individual today. For a level 1 superpowered individual to upgrade to level 2, they either needed to consume 10 level 2 energy crystals or 100 level 1 energy crystals. Currently, he had a total of 43 energy crystals in his possession. Xiong Chuomo did not enter the lobby directly. Instead, he went around to the security guardroom beside it. There should be surveillance cameras, and the power had not been cut off yet, so he could check the zombie distribution inside the KTV through the monitors. Arriving at the guardroom, he found it locked from the inside. He circled to the window and peered inside, only to see 4 zombies wandering around the room. Presumably, they had been scratched by zombies, then hid in the guardroom, and eventually succumbed to the zombie virus. Without further hesitation, he smashed the window with his axe. The sound of breaking glass alerted the zombies inside, and Xiong Chuomo quickly dispatched them all, gaining another 2 energy crystals. He quickly collected the energy crystals and did not linger, retreating to an open area outside. The sound of breaking glass might have attracted nearby zombies. After all, time was still plentiful, and being cautious was never a bad thing. Soon 3 zombies emerged from somewhere and clustered toward the guardroom. After waiting a few more minutes and seeing no additional zombies, he went forward and killed them all. This time, no energy crystals were dropped. Climbing through the window into the guardroom, he replaced the stab-resistant vest worn by one of the zombies and picked up the riot shield that had fallen at its feet. The security equipment of Delong KTV was clearly more robust than that of their apartment building's property security. This was a major upgrade. Focusing on the surveillance monitors, he discovered that outside what appeared to be an employee workroom deep on the first floor, 4 zombies were blocking the door. On the 2nd through 4th floors, each corridor had no fewer than 7 or 8 zombies wandering about. Xiong Chuomo scratched his head. The number of zombies seemed far too low. Delong KTV boasted a daily occupancy rate of 90. By that count, even if there weren't 1,000 people, 600 to 700 should be present. Today was the 2nd day after the zombie outbreak. There should be at least 400 to 500 zombies. He shifted his gaze to the monitor of the neighboring building, Delong Slow Bar. He couldn't help but draw a sharp breath, for at the narrow metal detector entrance of the bar a dense mass of zombies was crammed together. Those outside wanted to get in, and those inside wanted to get out. With so many zombies packed together they couldn't move. Xiong Chuomo initially thought there was something wrong with the monitor. Seeing no fewer than 300 zombies, he felt a surge of hesitation. The slow bar and the KTV's first floor were connected at the back and also adjoining the emergency staircases of the second, third, and fourth floors. If he caused any commotion inside the KTV, it might attract the zombies from the slow bar. Although zombies couldn't climb stairs with such a large mob blocking the ground floor, he wouldn't be able to leave. Observing the distribution of the zombies, Xiong Chuomo found it strange. Under normal circumstances, most zombies were scattered randomly unless they encountered food. Hundreds of zombies crammed into one spot like this was definitely not a coincidence. Of course, hundreds of zombies gathered together presented both danger and opportunity. If he could find a large amount of gasoline and set a fire, he might just reap a huge harvest in one go. After a moment's thought, he decided to go for it. Xiong Chuomo left the security guard room and headed toward the first floor employee workroom. He killed all 4 zombies blocking the door and collected the single energy crystal they dropped. He knocked on the door gently in a rhythmic pattern, then leaned close to the crack and asked in a low voice, "Is anyone there?" "Yes," came a woman's voice from behind the door. "Great, another rescuer has come." With a click, the door opened. Xiong Chuomo quickly slipped inside and closed. "You?" The 2 women in waitress uniforms were so frightened that their faces turned pale and they stepped back repeatedly. Another male waiter also retreated several steps, eyeing him warily. "Shoo, keep your voice down. Do you want to attract all the zombies?" Xiong Chuomo had been worried that talking outside might draw the zombies' attention, which was why he had come in. "Oh." Seeing that Xiong Chuomo had no other aggressive moves, the 3 relaxed slightly. One of the female waitresses stared at him and asked a question. "Are you here alone?" "Yes." Xiong Chuomo nodded in reply. Hearing that the newcomer was just one person, especially seeing his attire, disappointment instantly appeared on their faces. "What are your names?" "I'm Xiong Chuomo." "I'm Lu Yang." "Chen Yixue." "Wang Ziki." After getting to know each other, Xiong Chuomo asked curiously, "By the way, what did you mean earlier when you said another rescuer has come?" On his way here, he hadn't seen any rescue teams. Even in his past life, the rescue teams didn't start operating until the 4th day. Now it was only the 2nd day. How could they arrive so quickly? There wasn't even enough time to prepare. "Yesterday noon, we heard gunshots nearby. But the gunshots stopped shortly after." "How can you be sure those are gunshots outside?" Xiong Chuomo was greatly surprised. There was no reason for it. Rescuing from a KTV was far more difficult than from a typical residential area. By all logic, residential neighborhoods should have been the priority. The place is crawling with zombies. What fool would be setting off firecrackers out there? Wang Ziki spoke bluntly. "Oh, a handgun." Xiong Chuomo didn't mind her tone. This information was extremely useful to him. Should be right, Lu Yang. Although none of the 3 had ever seen a real handgun, they had encountered them in games. This was basic common sense. Xiong Chuomo immediately understood. So it wasn't government rescue workers after all. A handgun's power was utterly insufficient against zombies. At least a submachine gun aiming for headshots would be needed. This meant there was more than one handgun left nearby. Suddenly he thought of the hundreds of zombies gathered at the entrance of the bar. If it were handguns, that would explain it. Someone had fired a gun. The sound drew in the zombies from both the KTV and the bar. They were trapped, and ultimately, from this, it seemed someone carrying a gun had entered from outside. Was there some VIP inside the bar that made others risk their lives to come and rescue them? Lu Yang continued to ask, "What made you think of coming here?" He noticed Xiong Chuomo was carrying a backpack and several weapons, giving the impression he had come prepared. Xiong Chuomo replied calmly, "I'm here to pick up a friend. He called me saying he was trapped in the Emperor Dragon Bar. Having a friend like you is truly fortunate." Chen Yixue and Wang Ziki couldn't help but sigh with emotion upon hearing this. "Let's drop that. For now, there are fewer zombies on the first floor. What are your plans?" Xiong Chuomo steered the conversation to the main topic. Hesitation flickered across the 3 faces. Earlier they had said they didn't want to stay a moment longer, yet now they dared not leave. Besides, they had ample food here and thought they could hole up for at least half a month. "Forget it, we won't go out. We plan to wait for rescue. There's plenty of food here to last us." The 3 exchanged glances and shook their heads. Xiong Chuomo didn't press further, but asked, "By the way, do you have a car? Or do you know anyone who does?" "We don't have a car. The manager has one. I remember he went upstairs to drink with guests on the 2nd floor." The 3 hesitated, but eventually revealed it. "One last question, where's the main circuit breaker?" "What are you trying to do?" Lu Yang looked wary. The reason they could stay here eating and drinking comfortably was the power supply. If the electricity went out, they'd have to eat raw food. To be honest, there are several hundred zombies at the entrance of the bar, making it impossible to get in. "I plan to go upstairs first to find a car key, head to the gas station for some gasoline, and then burn them all." "Don't worry, I'll clear the upstairs zombies first." If I run into any survivors along the way, I'll take them out. And I should warn you, the whole city will lose power tomorrow. The rescue teams won't arrive until the day after tomorrow, and they'll start from the northern district moving south. Xiong Chuomo left out one thing. In his past life, the rescue only lasted 3 days before being halted due to massive casualties. The three fell silent for a while, as if digesting his words. Finally, they raised a question. Aren't you afraid the fire will reach inside? Isn't your friend still in the bar? No need to worry about that. I'll drop Molotov cocktails from the outermost emergency staircase on the second floor, keeping the fire contained outside. Xiong Chuomo fabricated a casual excuse. In his view, there were probably no survivors left inside the bar. The main circuit breaker is in the basement. You need a key to open it. The manager has the key. He's wearing a work uniform and should be easy to identify. If you don't take the elevator, you'll have to go through the parking lot. Thanks. Xiong Chuomo expressed his gratitude. You're welcome. If you find an extra car key, just spare one for us. Ever since they hid in the workroom, the staff walkie-talkies had been silent. It seemed that apart from them, the other employees had likely met with misfortune. No problem. Wait for my good news. Having obtained useful intelligence, Xiong Chuomo didn't linger. He retraced his steps, heading up the emergency stairwell. After Xiong Chuomo left, Wang Ziki asked worriedly, do you believe what he said? Even if we don't, what? Besides, you were a bit sharp-tongued just now. What if you angered him, and he dealt with you? How would you handle that? Chun Yishua shot her a glance, and said with exasperation. I have you guys here. Besides, he's not bad-looking. I wouldn't lose out. Hey, are you forgetting I'm still here? Lu Yang weakly protested. Look who's talking. I recall someone hiding behind us 2 women just a moment ago. Chun Yishua paused, then continued. The power outage is certain, but I didn't expect it so soon. I thought we had at least a week. Xiong Chuomo reached the 4th floor, and working his way down, slashed through the zombies in the corridors. From the 4th floor to the 2nd, it took him about 10 minutes to clear the corridor zombies, yielding only a single energy crystal. It seemed all the important targets were in that crowd at the bar's entrance. He did pick up 3 car keys. The KTV's private rooms all had sliding doors that opened inward, and zombies incapable of pulling doors simply charged mindlessly. Each room was a simple zombie trap. Needless to say, there were certainly a number of zombies inside the rooms. However, he didn't open any doors. As soon as he approached, he could hear songs playing on loop inside. Opening a soundproof door would surely alert nearby zombies. Of course, many rooms were silent. If they weren't empty, survivors might be hiding inside. None of the zombies killed in the corridors was the so-called manager. That meant he was likely inside one of the rooms, or possibly among the 300 zombies outside. It seemed he had to change his plan. Originally, he intended to cut the power first, then deal with the zombies in the rooms, gathering a good number of energy crystals. With luck, the crystals from the rooms might be enough to elevate him to a level 2 superhuman. With level 2 strength, he would have a better chance of burning the zombies. After all, the zombies were just clustered at the entrance and the space around wasn't sealed. Once the fire started, they would scatter. It would be good if he could burn a third of them in one go. After the zombies dispersed, he could use sound to separate them further and finish them off. Unfortunately, as it stood, opening every room was impractical and cutting the power was impossible. He had to set the fire first and deal with the room zombies later. Xiong Chuomo fulfilled his promise and gave them a car key. By the way, there are quite a few tools in the security room. It's safe there for now. Thanks. Following their directions, he arrived at the underground parking lot. He pressed the car key from time to time until a blue Longmi car near the center responded. He got in and drove swiftly toward the nearest gas station. Upon arriving at the destination, he alighted and hacked the 4 zombies to death. He parked the Longmi car beside the charging station and plugged it in to recharge. During this time, he retrieved 4 25-liter fuel containers from the gas station, filled them with gasoline, and also hauled several cases of purified water and a few cartons of Tongshi Zixiang and Lingmeilong instant noodles from the shelves into the vehicle. Fortunately, the power had not yet been cut off, and the charging stations as well as the self-service fuel pumps were still operational. Otherwise, it would have cost him considerable effort. With the Longmi car estimated to require another half hour for a full charge, and adhering to the principle that every second counted, Xiong Chuomo had his lunch on the spot. Once the Longmi car was fully juiced, he drove back to Dilong KTV. Along the way, the roar of the engine attracted numerous roadside zombies, but he left them far behind. Arriving at the destination, Xiong Chuomo did not park in the lot. Instead, he left the car by the roadside, so that if the situation spiraled out of control, he could make a swift escape. The time was approaching noon. There were still over 5 hours left. Since he never let go of his weapon, he had to make 2 trips back and forth to carry the 2 25-liter gasoline barrels up to the 2nd floor. While Xiong Chuomo was busy transporting the gasoline, in a private room on the 2nd floor, 6 survivors were discussing a plan. It's been a while since any zombies passed by outside. Shouldn't we leave as soon as possible? One young man, after pressing his face against the semi-transparent soundproof door to observe for a while, made the suggestion. He was not originally a guest in this room, but had been in the adjacent one. When the zombie outbreak struck, he happened to be in the restroom. Upon stepping out, he saw his former friends turning into zombies and tearing at each other. Terrified by the sight, he immediately dashed out of the restroom, only to witness a similar horrifying scene in the corridor. In his panic, and with no better option, he fled into the neighboring private room. It seemed the goddess of fortune had smiled upon him. The 5 people in the room, 2 men and 3 women, had not turned into zombies. Upon hearing that there were hordes of zombies outside, they quickly barricaded the door and had survived until now. Shouldn't we wait a bit longer? Don't you remember that the same thing happened yesterday at noon? If we hadn't run fast that time, we'd have been done for. A young woman in cool attire couldn't help but remind them. Just yesterday at noon, the zombies had also suddenly vanished from their doorstep, just as they had today. Seeing this, the group decided to make a break for it. But as they reached the stairwell, the scene before them plunged them into sheer terror. At the stair exit on the 3rd and 4th floors, a dense swarm of zombies came pouring down. Faced with this, they had no choice but to retreat back into the room. Exactly. And that sound we heard back then, it must have been gunfire. We'd be better off staying here and waiting for rescue instead of taking unnecessary risks. Another pretty young woman chimed in. Since there were gunshots yesterday, why hasn't anyone come to save us? Besides, we're still alive, and well, aren't we? A man in his 30s with a small mustache grumbled under his breath. Our phones are all dead. We have no idea what's going on outside. Emergency calls haven't gone through since last night, which means the situation is serious. We can't send out a distress signal. Even if there are rescue teams, they might not get to us anytime soon. Regardless, we need to at least go out and check what's happening outside, don't we? A pot-bellied middle-aged man began analyzing the current situation. He paused briefly, then continued, anyway, staying here will only starve us to death sooner or later. We might as well go out and scout while we still have some strength left. Otherwise, when we're too weak to even walk, that'll be a real joke. That makes sense. I agree, we should take a look. If something goes wrong, we can always fall back like we did yesterday. A seductive-looking woman kicked off her high heels, planning to run barefoot. Meanwhile, Xiong Chuomo, oblivious to all this, unscrewed the gasoline barrel cap and tossed the entire barrel into the densest cluster of zombies. Weighing nearly 20 kilograms, the barrel dropped from a height of 5 or 6 meters, knocking down 2 zombies with a dull thud. In the eerie silence, the sound traveled far. Like a hornet's nest, disturbed, the once-calm zombies began to stir, crowding toward the source of the noise. He repeated the process, tossing another gasoline barrel into the zombie horde. Just as he was waiting for more gasoline to evaporate before igniting it, a voice suddenly rang out behind him. "What are you doing?" Though not loud, the voice carried in the silent environment, and Xiong Chuomo was startled by the unexpected sound. At the sound of the voice, he noticed 7 or 8 zombies on the outermost layer below were no longer pushing inward, but instead turned and shuffled slowly toward the first-floor lobby. Damn it! Xiong Chuomo cursed under his breath, swiftly pulling out a windproof lighter. He lit a cigarette, blew on it a few times, and tossed it into the zombie crowd. He dashed toward the group's location. He had known there were survivors in the KTV when he cleared out the zombies in the however, he had no intention of rescuing them. His main purpose here was to obtain energy crystals to strengthen. If he happened to run into them, he wouldn't mind lending a hand. But with imminent danger all around, he could barely protect himself. Taking on deadweight or unreliable companions could spell doom. He hurried past the group without a word, dashing down to the lobby. "Wait for us. Do you have any food?" Seeing that Xiong Chuomo ignored them and was fleeing downstairs, the others scrambled to follow, shouting after him. Bloody hell! How did these morons survive yesterday? Xiong Chuomo fumed inwardly. If not for the overwhelming number of zombies, he would have silenced them for good. In the KTV from the 2nd floor upward, to maximize the number of private rooms, the corridors were not straight, but wound around twice. By the time Xiong Chuomo reached the first-floor lobby, zombies had already come into view and thick black smoke rose in the distance. Without the slightest hesitation, he continued running outside. "Oh, zombies. Run. Help me, I can't run anymore. Quick, let's go back." The crowd fragmented into 2 groups. The 3 in front sprinted desperately toward the door. The remaining 3 halted their advance and turned back to the 2nd floor. Having been starved for an entire day, they found a sudden burst of energy in the face of crisis, and their speed was not slow. The group's shouting, combined with the fire Xiong Chuomo had set, triggered a violent commotion among the zombies. A dark, seething mass surged after them. Help me. Aya!" A piercing scream came from behind. Xiong Chuomo glanced back and gasped. 2 zombies, their bodies engulfed in raging flames, were charging at incredible speed, overtaking most of the pack and instantly pouncing on 2 people. They opened their blood-drenched maws and bit mercilessly into the victims' necks. Blood spurted, and in no time the struggles ceased. These were actually level 2 zombies. No, even a level 2 zombie wouldn't be this fast. Furthermore, he observed that aside from these 2 zombies with markedly abnormal speed, the rest moved at roughly the same pace. If level 2 zombies had truly evolved, there was no reason only these two had reached that stage. At the very least, there should have been a number of level 1 zombies nearby. They were mutant zombies, and speed type ones at that. Zombies could evolve through killing and devouring. In a densely populated place like in KTV, encountering evolved zombies did not surprise Xiong Chuomo. What truly astonished him was that ability-type mutant zombies had appeared as early as the second day. Mutant zombies were a special breed among the undead, mutating during the evolutionary process. Once a zombie mutated, its strength, speed, and defense far surpassed those of normal zombies of the same level. Some high-level mutant zombies could even develop unique abilities. In his previous life, ability-type mutant zombies became widely known on internet short videos on the 5th day, causing massive casualties among rescue teams. A level 1 ability mutant zombie was something he couldn't handle now, let alone 2 of them. Yet when Xiong Chuomo saw the flames still blazing fiercely on the zombies, he began to scheme inwardly. The fire from burning gasoline clung like a stubborn parasite, drawing nourishment from the host's body, refusing to relent until it had consumed everything. If the flames kept burning for another hour or 2, the zombies' defenses might weaken, presenting an opportunity. Xiong Chuomo deliberated silently. The threat of mutant zombies was too great. They should be eliminated while still weak. Otherwise, by the 7th day, when zombies underwent mass evolution, level 1 mutant zombies would transform into level 2 ones, making them far harder to deal with. Especially these two, which were among the rarest of mutant zombies. With that thought, Xiong Chuomo hurried toward a Longmi car parked by the roadside. Now that the screaming had stopped, the zombies had lost their target and began aimlessly wandering. The mutant zombies, failing to find an enemy, circled in confusion before returning to feast on the 2 corpses. Whether intimidated by the mutant zombies or not, the other zombies resisted the temptation of the fallen food and merely watched from a distance. Xiong Chuomo took several bottles of mineral water and drank them in one breath. He filled the empty bottles with gasoline and from a distance hurled them at the blazing mutant zombies. He threw 4 bottles, 1 missed, but the remaining 3 hit their marks precisely. With fresh fuel added, the flames roared even brighter. Knowing about the mutant zombies, Xiong Chuomo dared not hunt the scattered ordinary zombies. Instead, he resolved to outlast the mutants. He decided to wear them down until they died. Maintaining a safe distance, whenever the 2 mutant zombies tried to separate, he made noise to draw their attention. Whenever the fire weakened, he promptly added oil to the flames. This continued for over 2 hours, consuming an entire barrel of gasoline. Xiong Chuomo knew his moment had come. The mutant zombies' speed now was incomparably slower than at first, even slower than ordinary zombies, feeble and decrepit. He waited. He waited for the moment when the 2 zombies would separate. He didn't have to wait long. They split apart, and judging the distance was too far for the other to reach in time, Xiong Chuomo struck. With a shield in his left hand and a sharp axe in his right, he rushed at the nearest mutant zombie, bringing the axe down onto its skull with all his might. The mutant zombie made no reaction and was killed with a single blow, easier than even a level 0 strike while the iron is hot. Without hesitation, he swiftly caught up to the other mutant zombie and delivered a merciful death. From the crisp, burnt zombie skulls, he gleefully extracted 2 level 1 ability cores. The remaining time was spent clearing out the zombies. Using a phone he had placed earlier, he dialed a number. The persistent ringtone lured a large group of zombies, easing his burden considerably. Whenever fatigue began to creep in, he would retreat into the car to rest and regain strength. Thus, Xiong Chuomo spent over 3 hours eliminating all the zombies. According to his count, he harvested 79 level 1 energy crystals and 3 ability cores. Fortunately, the KTV's fire safety was adequate, and most building materials were non-flammable, preventing a major fire. Even so, the hall was littered with charred corpses, emitting a pungent, nauseating, burnt, rotten stench. Xiong Chuomo checked the time. It was nearly 5:30 p.m. Deciding not to explore further, he drew. Whether because of his post, or because some people had run out of supplies, he encountered several groups of survivors engaging in zero-cost shopping at small supermarkets and stores along the way. Whenever they saw his car approaching, they scattered. Xiong Chuomo took no notice. If he were on foot encountering a driver, he would also keep his distance. One should not harbor malicious intent, but must guard against others' malice. Otherwise, if the driver were foolish enough to honk and speed away, the roadside survivors would suffer undeserved calamity. Approaching the residential rental unit, Xiong Chuomo did not drive into the complex, but parked by the roadside. The car was an electric vehicle. By tomorrow, with the large-scale power outage, it would become nearly useless. Approaching the residential rental unit, Xiong Chuomo did not drive into the complex, but parked by the roadside. The car was an electric vehicle. In truth, vehicles like this were only drivable for the first few days. Initially, it relied on a food processing plant, then recruited members, gradually expanding its power. They've probably grouped together and gone into the city. He walked back to the apartment complex. It was worth noting that the zombies in the nearby buildings had been cleared by him, and the area now felt slightly more lively than yesterday. Along the way, he spotted 4 or 5 people carrying large bags and returning from successful scavenging trips. In his previous life, he would have had to sneak around even at noon on the second day. Back in his rented room, he locked the door, took a hot shower, and laid out all the energy crystals, beginning to consume them in batches. One by one, the crystals dissolved into warm currents that flowed through every inch of his skin and every corner of his body. The sensation was the same as before, though less intense and painful. When Xiong Chuomo opened his eyes again, he felt an overwhelming surge of power throughout his body. His senses had sharpened. Even the rustling of leaves outside the window reached his ears with clarity. Each level of advancement was a qualitative leap. In an unknown fight, he could kill his level 1 superpowered self in an instant. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. On just the second day, aside from abilities, I've already reached my previous life's peak. Xiong Chuomo recalled his former life of barely surviving. It all felt like an illusory dream. He had obtained 3 ability crystals today, plus 1 from yesterday. Just 6 more crystals to gather, and once he awakened his ability, he would truly match his former strength. What a capricious fate. He shook his head involuntarily. He believed that day would not be long in coming. Xiong Chuomo had a simple dinner and began browsing the internet. As a result of the prophecy in his post yesterday, countless people started paying close attention to the news from the Baga country. As expected, the nuclear power plant explosion in the Baga country arrived on schedule. The news could not be concealed and became one of the trending topics. His post, whose prophecy had come true, had become the hottest subject of the day. Opening the post, he saw it filled with various comments. Some panicked, some worried, some seeking verification, and many expressing concern for the poster. Prophet, are you still here? You haven't replied for a whole day. Now we don't even know how many have died, yet you tell me the real apocalypse has. I'm truly grateful. Don't panic, everyone. Maybe it was just a lucky guess. After all, the nuclear plant explosion in the Baga country isn't the first time. Years ago, they dumped untreated nuclear wastewater into the sea, an act that could ruin generations to come. If they can do that, they'd certainly let people risk their lives to shut down the plant. I think this is actually similar to his prediction of the power outage, basically foreseeable. The commenter above is right. I support you. What's the use of supporting him? Haven't you heard the saying, better to believe it exists than to believe it doesn't? Killing zombies yields energy crystals that can be consumed to enhance physical abilities. I'd like to ask, how significant is the enhancement? Can one become like the legendary cultivators who can fly and burrow into the earth? Today, my friend and I killed a zombie on the street. We dug into its skull for a long time, but there was nothing inside. Are you out of your mind, commenter above? Didn't the OP say that only zombies after 6 days would have them? And how did such a disgusting video pass the review? He remained silent to all these comments. That account, along with the phone and SIM card, had been thrown into the sewer right after he replied. It seems he'll have to move out ahead of time tomorrow. The real name system on the internet makes it easy to find all information about the poster. Perhaps the day after tomorrow, someone might come to visit based on the location of the post, which could lead to unnecessary trouble. Moreover, his previous life ended too pathetically. Since fate had granted him a second life, he certainly didn't want his freedom to be restricted. Let everyone believe the poster is dead. Having made up his mind, Xiong Chuomo continued browsing for useful information. At present, all the information online was about zombies. Soon a video titled, "Making a Simple Zombie Trap," appeared before him. It had high viewership, so he immediately clicked into it. The video appeared to be shot in a rural setting. A young man dug a large pit in front of a big tree, hung a live chicken upside down from a branch above the pit, and then hid himself in the tree. After finishing these preparations, the young man used an iron spoon to strike an iron basin, making noise to attract zombies. Lured by the sound, and the live chicken, zombies fell into the pit one after another. Finally, he poured gasoline into the pit and burned them all. The content of the video was unremarkable to him. What truly caught his attention were the author's summaries and insights. When choosing a spot, it's best to pick a taller tree, otherwise the zombies will just circle around the tree and won't fall into the pit. Secondly, the same trap can only be used once, otherwise, even if you wait until the flames are completely extinguished and lure the zombies again, they won't fall into the pit. I don't know the exact reason, but I hope this helps everyone. Among these summaries, it was the second point that caught his attention. The trap's single-use nature seemed to conflict with his understanding. In his previous life, they had used similar traps, and for mindless zombies, once they fell for it, they would definitely fall again next time. But considering the conditions of the two situations, a clear difference emerged. The pit dug by the young man in the video was shallow, just slightly above the zombies' waist, preventing them from climbing out. In his previous life, the deep pit traps they set were as deep as 10 to 20 meters. Recalling his earlier conjecture about how zombies hunted prey, it seemed to make sense. So zombies indeed possessed not only hearing and smell, but also heat sensing. In his previous life, he was merely a level 2 ability user and always moved in groups during missions. Thus, the noise and scent generated by a large group were impossible to conceal. They simply cleared their way through. Consequently, he died without ever knowing that zombies had this ability. In fact, verifying whether zombies have this function is simple. Just smear yourself with the mucus from a zombie's body, cover it with some rotting smell, and then walk up to a zombie to test it. Of course, trying might also result in death. Xiong Chuomo continued scrolling. Besides zombie videos, countless pieces of information about the True God Church were being followed and shared, sparking strong curiosity in him. He randomly picked one and clicked into it. It roughly described that humanity was undergoing the 5th mass extinction, and that this apocalypse could only be resolved by believing in the so-called true God. To survive, one had to become a follower of their True God Church, believe in the true God, and gain eternal life. Xiong Chuomo was speechless after reading it. Not to mention that he was a reborn person. In his previous life, there was no so-called true God coming to save them until his death. Such a shoddy trick from the last century used to scare ghosts. Surely no one would be foolish enough to believe there. Indeed, without human review, all sorts of monsters and freaks had emerged on major internet self-media platforms. After a brief grumble, Xiong Chuomo's expression turned somewhat solemn. In his previous life, there was no such thing as the True God Church. Could it be that his post had started a Holy crap, there really are that many idiots. As he scrolled, he was shocked by what he saw. The comment section was full of brainwash-sounding, impractical, and idiotic remarks. Some said, since joining the church, zombies avoid him. Others claimed family members who turned into zombies returned to normal with the help of the true God. Especially the cheap 5-cent special effects in the videos. He couldn't understand it at all. Xiong Chuomo continued scrolling. It seemed that under the big data algorithm, the more you focused on something, the more it pushed it to you. Next, he encountered several consecutive videos, all about the True God Church. After browsing through many videos, Xiong Chuomo gradually sorted out some thoughts. It turned out that the most popular video featured a middle-aged man who called himself the True God Saint's son, claiming he had received communication and blessings from the True God and obtained divine power. However, the so-called divine power he spoke of was merely a fire element ability. If his speculation was correct, this middle-aged man was the first person on the entire internet to awaken an elemental ability. As the video went viral, some people began to follow the faith with skepticism. Among those believers, a few automatically awakened abilities, and combined with the prior suggestion, this became the so-called blessing. Unexpectedly, this person has a sharp mind, using this to establish an organization in advance. Perhaps before the apocalypse, he was a CX agent who knew how to exploit human weaknesses and deceive others. Should I also learn from his methods? Xiong Chuomo stroked his chin, pondered for a moment, and finally gave, because such lies would eventually be exposed. Ordinary people who hadn't awakened superpowers only needed to consume an energy crystal to awaken. The so-called divine gift rumor would collapse. If one were reborn a few months before the apocalypse, there would be time to prepare. But in the apocalypse, with water and electricity cut off and no way to contact each other, what use was such an organization? Putting down his phone, Xiong Chuomo prepared the supplies in the room, planning to move the next day. His location was an urban village densely populated. In 5 days, the first wave of zombie horde would erupt here. At the break of dawn, Xiong Chuomo awoke. He glanced at the time, 7:26. The weather outside had returned to pre-apocalypse conditions, clear skies no longer shrouded in mist. After breakfast, he filled his backpack, leaving behind the surplus supplies he couldn't carry. He opened the door and headed downstairs. The air began to reek of a foul stench. Xiong Chuomo couldn't help but wrinkle his nose. The odor caused him intense discomfort, sending waves of dizziness through his mind. As a level 2 superhuman, his sense of smell had been enhanced, a mixed blessing. Fortunately, his physical constitution was extremely robust, and after acclimating, he was no longer affected. Arriving at the spot where he had parked the previous day, he stared at the shattered rear window. The food and water inside were gone, and fragments of broken glass were scattered all over the ground. Fortunately, the gasoline canister was still there. Come to think of it, a canister weighing several dozen pounds couldn't be eaten, and with zombies nearby, who would haul such a cumbersome burden? But he found it odd that there were no corpses around. He had parked on the street rather than in the residential compound, partly intending to use the zombies to protect the car. Although he had cleared the zombies from the nearby streets, he couldn't guarantee that the noise from breaking windows or prying locks wouldn't attract zombies from other streets. That someone could make a clean getaway at dusk or even nightfall genuinely earned his admiration. After a thorough inspection confirming that everything was safe, Xiong Chuomo drove toward the Delong KTV. Before reaching the location, he could already smell a burning odor mixed with a foul stench from afar. He parked the car by the roadside and continued clearing the nearby zombies. With his strength elevated to level 2 superhuman, dealing with ordinary level 0 zombies was as easy as chopping vegetables. After finishing off a few scattered zombies without yielding any energy crystals, he headed to the second floor. Kicking open one of the doors, loud music blared out. Xiong Chuomo remained unfazed, gripped his axe, and quickly dispatched all the zombies in the private room. Along the way, he obtained at least one energy crystal from each room. When he kicked open the door to room 217, terrified screams erupted from inside. Help! Oh! The people in the room scurried like panicked mice hiding behind the sofa. One quick-handed individual dashed into the restroom and locked himself in. Open the door. Let me in. A woman who was too late frantically pounded on the restroom door, sobbing. The absurd scene caught him off guard. What was all this? Was he really that terrifying? After a moment, when the sobbing woman realized that the intruder was just standing at the door without any further action, she saw that it was not a zombie breaking in, but another survivor. It's you. Xiong Chuomo looked closely and recognized them as the group he had encountered yesterday when he was about to set a fire. He had thought they had all perished to the zombies, but there were still a few survivors. Sensing the unusual commotion outside, the restroom door opened and a pot-bellied middle-aged man emerged. In the entire private room, there were 3 people, 2 women and 1 man. After a brief silence, Xiong Chuomo took the initiative to ask, what are your names? I'm Zhao Yong. Tan Kursin. My name is Lin Xingxue. After learning their names, he continued, the zombies downstairs have all been cleared. You can leave safely now. The 3 of them showed joy and gathered around Xiong Chuomo. Thank you. Are you with the rescue team? Can you get... Xiong Chuomo couldn't be bothered to waste more words with them. There's plenty of food in the lobby counter. You can help yourselves. I have other survivors to rescue. With that, he ignored them, kicked open the next door, and walked in. The 3 in the private room exchanged glances. After a moment, Tan Kursin, the woman who had been crying earlier, scowled at Zhao Yong and yelled, why didn't you open the door earlier? It was an emergency. The door was locked and I couldn't get it open in time. Zhao Yong chuckled, making up an excuse. Tan Kursin wanted to say more, but was interrupted by Lin Xingxue. Enough, let's stop talking and get out of here. Neither of us has anywhere else to go, Boss Zhao. You won't abandon us, right? Lin Xingxue said with a coquettish smile, reaching out to give Zhao Yong a playful touch. No problem. I have a house on G Street with plenty of food stored. Enough for all of us, Zhao Yong said, shivering slightly, and quickly patted his chest in assurance. That house was where he usually met his lover, and indeed there was a good amount of food stored there. When the zombie outbreak happened 2 days ago, he had tried calling his family, but got no answer. Presumably they had all met with misfortune. The thought of his family turning into zombies made him afraid to go home. In less than half an hour, Xiong Chuomo had cleared all the private rooms. He harvested a total of 48 energy crystals. Additionally, he encountered a couple in a room on the 3rd floor. Only 2 private rooms in the entire KTV had survivors. At this thought, a shiver of fear ran through Xiong Chuomo's heart. Perhaps he had been somewhat reckless. Clearing such a large KTV was no less challenging than tackling an advanced instance, yet he had managed to clear it with such ease. Truly, fortune favors the bold. He had reaped great rewards. Initially, his plan had been to lure zombies out by calling from a phone in the lobby, then pick them off one by one in the open space. But he got lucky with a large zombie horde that saved him a lot of time. Even without that luck, by steady and methodical action, he could still have cleared the instance alone. The only variable was the appearance of 2 mutant zombies with abilities. If Zhao Yong and his group had reached the lobby before him yesterday, he would have been done for. This incident served as a warning. He considered himself cautious enough, but even the best plans could be ruined by incompetent allies. After clearing all the zombies in the KTV, Xiong Chuomo prepared to explore the adjacent slow bar. Arriving at the lobby, he saw a few people wolfing down instant noodles. Fortunately, the electricity was still working, or they would have had to eat the dry noodle bricks. When they saw Xiong Chuomo coming downstairs, they cast grateful looks and greeted him. Xiong Chuomo gestured for everyone to keep quiet. He then proceeded slowly toward the adjacent slow bar. The journey was unimpeded until they reached the entrance of the slow bar. A large expanse of pitch-black ground was covered with a thick layer of charred substance. Even a single glance could evoke a strong sense of discomfort in one's heart. Seeing this, Xiong Chuomo abandoned the thought of searching for energy crystals and pistols. After all, having only a pistol without bullets was equally futile. Stepping into the slow bar, the air was filled with the stench of burnt, smoky, rotting, pungent, and choking odors. All the tables, chairs, and sofas had been reduced to ashes, leaving only the bar counter and dance floor in ruins, a scene of desolation. Xiong Chuomo approached a charred corpse, gently tapped its head with an axe, and it instantly crumbled. He picked up a khaki-colored energy crystal and put it into his pocket. The whole process was like a farmer harvesting in autumn. After making a round, he had collected 9 energy crystals in total. When he walked to a room resembling a storage area some distance from the dance floor, he seemed to hear faint sounds coming from inside. Driven by curiosity, he approached and listened, discovering there were indeed people inside. Tisk tisk tsk. I never imagined anyone could survive in such circumstances. Xiong Chuomo was greatly surprised. The slow bar was not like the KTV, which at least had private rooms for isolation. In such an open environment, once the zombie outbreak occurred, there was simply no way to escape. Moreover, he had set a fire yesterday. Even those not bitten by zombies would have been choked to death by the thick smoke. Since he had encountered them, he might as well help them out. He had a premonition that the people inside might not be ordinary. Perhaps they were the ones who had made a distress call with a gun the day before. After all, dead people couldn't call for help. Is anyone in there? Xiong Chuomo knocked on the door with his axe. Yes, there is. Great. We finally got rescue. Wait a moment, we'll open the door. Inside, there was a clatter of glass bottles breaking. Before long, the door for young men and women immediately walked out. Judging by their attire, the two women were waitresses from the slow bar, while one of the two men was dressed in luxurious clothes, wearing expensive watches and rings, looking like a rich second generation. Just the four of you. Xiong Chuomo was somewhat surprised internally. This was the second time he had been astonished. He had thought it might be some CEO or big shot trapped inside. Just the four of us. Why didn't you come earlier? The rich second generation complained, covering his nose with a tissue. Do you have any food? Give us some. I've been eating melon seeds every day and I'm sick of them. Is this how you treat your savior? Xiong Chuomo replied expressionlessly, his tone flat. The rich second generation suddenly shuddered, looking at Xiong Chuomo with horror in his eyes. Just now he seemed to feel that he had already stepped 1 foot into the gates of hell. You, aren't you sent by my father? He stammered, his voice trembling. Xiong Chuomo's heart stirred, but his face remained impassive as he said, No, I am not. If nothing unexpected happened, the people your father sent earlier have all turned into zombies. What? How could that be? The rich second generation's expression clearly shifted. The other people stood silently aside without a word. What are your names? Xiong Chuomo asked as usual. My name is Li Jiawei, the rich second generation replied first. Im Zhongyak. Lu Guangwei. Wang Shihan. Can you give me some food? He'll buy it with money. The rich second generation, Li Jiawei, tremblingly took out a card from his pocket and handed it to Xiong Chuomo. There's 57000 in this card. The password is 131,420. Just give me some food, and it's yours. Love you for a lifetime. Xiong Chuomo chuckled wryly, never expecting this second generation to be so playful. TSK. Before the apocalypse, with his salary, it would have taken him over 10 years of not eating or drinking to earn 57000. But now to him it was just an ordinary card. Not to mention that no one worked at the bank, and soon the city would lose power. Even with the card, you couldn't withdraw money from an ATM. Moreover, in a doomsday scenario, money was just waste paper, too rough, even for wiping. What? Not enough. Seeing the smile on Xiong Chuomo's face, but him not taking the card, Li Jiawei grew anxious. Money. I don't lack money, there's plenty of that stuff in banks. If you can get me what I want, then maybe. Xiong Chuomo put away his smile and said seriously, What do you want? The latest long-way phone, a Falcon, or help me find someone? Xiong Chuomo made an extravagant demand. The second generation's family background was clearly wealthy, and these things were just a drop in the bucket for him. Long-way phone. The four exclaimed in surprise, finally turning their gaze to Wang Shihan. Now that it's the apocalypse, aren't phones everywhere? Was someone actually trading food for a phone? Wang Shihan hesitated for a moment, then took out a phone with a dead battery from her pocket and handed it to Xiong Chuomo. Xiong Chuomo similarly took out some chocolate bars and compressed biscuits from his backpack and gave them to her as an exchange. I have 2 Falcons in the trunk of my car, but they're out of air and the air pump is at home. Li Jiawei, seeing that Xiong Chuomo's backpack indeed had plenty of food, agreed to the exchange. The air pump is at home. So you want me to go to your house? Xiong Chuomo raised an eyebrow, somewhat displeased. The other's father was a gang leader capable of dispatching armed underlings. With his current strength, he couldn't afford to provoke them. What if they went back on their word? Wouldn't that be walking right into a trap and delivering himself? Brother, didn't you want to find someone? If you take me home safely, you'll have my dad help you search. Also, I remember the phone our housekeeper uses is the latest long-way model. I can give it to you. Li Jiawei quickly made a promise. His phone was also dead, so he couldn't call for help, and he didn't know how many zombies were outside. He had no confidence in returning home safely. Xiong Chuomo thought for a moment and finally agreed. He could pass on the items, but he had to find the person. Xiong Chuomo handed half of the food in his backpack to the other party and led the 4 people out of the slow bar. As soon as they returned to the KTV lobby, the 8 people originally in the lobby saw the 4 behind Xiong Chuomo and instantly changed expressions, clutching tightly the little food they had in their arms. Only when they saw that the 4 also carried quite a bit of food did they relax. Are these your friends? Wang Ziki, who had been hiding in the first-floor staff office, greeted him. Xiong Chuomo was slightly taken aback, then came to his senses and said to her, No, it seems my friend has fallen. Please accept my condolences. It's fine, I'm used to it, Xiong Chuomo replied indifferently. What are your plans later? The pot-bellied middle-aged man Zhao Yong stepped forward and asked, "Earlier we didn't ask for your name, young man." Xiong Chuomo. This really is a nice name. We three plan to drive home, Zhao Yong said, pointing to the two women beside him. We too want to go back and check on our families. The young couple exchanged glances, their expressions tinged with worry. Can I follow you? Wang Shihan, who had been silently exchanging food using her phone, asked softly. It's dangerous to follow me. I'm heading to places infested with zombies. Xiong Chuomo declined tactfully. He had subtly inquired earlier and learned that none of them had awakened any abilities. Their names were not those of notable figures from his past life. Bringing them along would only be a burden. If you have nowhere to go, you can drive to the northern part of the city. Rescue teams will arrive tomorrow. Rescue teams? Tan Kerson, standing beside Zhao Yong, asked in surprise. Xiong Chuomo nodded. What? You want to go? Zhao Yong's expression turned displeased. Yes, I want. Tan Kerson's resolve was firm. And me? Rather than going to your house, I'd rather follow the official rescue. Lin Qingxue, the other woman beside Zhao Yong, echoed her sentiment. Zhao Yong's face darkened. The dream of a life with two women had evaporated, but he couldn't voice his frustration, for he himself had considered heading to the official rescue base. Let's go. May fate reunite us. Xiong Chuomo waved for Li Jiawei to follow. The two arrived at the underground parking lot and stopped before a black Lambwa Taimei. Tisk TSK. Not bad. He knew that such a Lambwa Taimei was worth over 4 million Longwa dollars. From the trunk, they retrieved 2 air rifles named Lai Sun. Though it was called a trunk, it was actually accessed from the front hood of the car. Despite being mere air rifles, their power rivaled that of standard pistols, especially the Lai Sun, whose lethality matched submachine guns. They made little noise when fired. All one needed was to load steel pellets. A skilled marksman could blow a level 0 zombie's head clean off with just 2 shots. Ordinary air rifles cost between 30,000 and 50,000, but one like this had a price range of 80,000 to 100,000, a prohibited item. You kept this in the trunk, not afraid of getting caught. The Lai Sun resembled a sniper rifle in shape. After assembly, it was about 70 to 80 centimeters long. Xiong Chuomo quickly disassembled it into parts, stowed them in his backpack, and couldn't help but tease a few words in high spirits. As long as no one reports it, there's nothing to worry about. That day I went bird hunting with a friend and ended up at a club at night. That's why it stayed in the car. Li Jiawei roughly described the incident. Where's your home? I live at Shiri Mountain Villa. Shiri Mountain Villa was a peak in the outskirts of Q City covering over 600 mu and was a villa district. There were only about 50 villas, each reportedly valued at no less than 80 million Longwa dollars. That's quite far. After I send you home, how do I get back? Xiong Chuomo pointed at the vehicle. Did he expect to drive another car? That wouldn't be called escorting, would it? Don't worry, once you get me home, this car is yours. Li Jiawei said nonchalantly. Oh. Xiong Chuomo stared into his eyes, trying to discern if he was telling the truth. This was a multi-million-dollar car, given away just for getting him home. Was it a hollow promise? Sensing Xiong Chuomo's doubt, Li Jiawei explained, I have 3 more like this in my... In truth, he also had several multi-million-dollar vehicles abroad that hadn't been shipped back. Well then, Xiong Chuomo nodded. It seemed poverty had limited his imagination. After familiarizing himself with the vehicle, he stepped on the gas and headed towards Shiri Mountain in the suburbs. Along the way, aside from a few abandoned cars that had crashed into roadside barriers, there was no other anomaly. Having experienced the luxury car for a while, he found it to be just so. Only faster acceleration and more horsepower with no other advantages. In fact, it wasn't even as comfortable to drive as the Longmi. Clearly, these wealthy fools were simply paying a few million in IQ tax. What does your father do? What's his name? Your people even have pistols, any more powerful weapons? Xiong Chuomo probed along the way. My father's name is Li Jingza. He runs a foreign trade company that imports raw materials from abroad into the... Li Jingza. If his memory served him right, the boss of Yongxing Base in his past life was named Li Jingza, whose ability was metal elemental. Besides him, there was a man named Wang Meng whose ability was full-body physical enhancement. Do you know Wang Meng? Xiong Chuomo interrupted. Yes, he was my middle school classmate. In his impression, Wang Meng should be a middle-aged man of at least 40. How could he be the same age as Li Jiawei? Could it be a different person with the same name? Noticing Xiong Chuomo lost in thought, Li Jiawei paused briefly before continuing. Actually, pistols are easy to come by. Every household in Shiri Manor has one, and I have several AK stored at home. Xiong Chuomo felt a silent pang in his heart. It was now 2027, the era of the 9th Purple Fire Fortune. What was the Fire Fortune? War? Armament? Only Longwa remained peaceful domestically. Many foreign countries were already embroiled in fierce conflicts. A bag of rice costing 100 or so could be sold for over 60 times that price in the Western 8 nations. Not to mention sugar, salt, chili powder. As a manufacturing giant, Longwa was subtly treading the path that a Chulika had taken in the last century to riches. In such a climate, there were no shortage of domestic factories producing and processing parts. For the wealthy, it sufficed to find a dozen parts manufacturers to assemble a pistol. However, pistols alone were useless without bullets. Bullets, in fact, were the hardest to obtain. That was why Xiong Chuomo hadn't bothered to search for a pistol at the entrance of the slow dance bar. Driving along the winding mountain road for over an hour, they finally arrived at the villa district. It was indeed an excellent location for building a base. Simply setting up obstacles on the road would make it a stronghold easy to defend and hard to attack. He stopped the car before a sprawling estate covering 7 or 8 mu. "Wait here, he'll get something out for you," Li Jiawei said, pulling out the gate key and entering. "Wait, don't you find something off?" Xiong Chuomo stopped him and issued a warning. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Li Jiawei had hidden in the storage room since the zombie outbreak. This was his first time out since the apocalypse. "We haven't encountered a single person on the way. That's very unusual." Logically, every household had guns, and with only about 50 homes here, the population density was low. Even the sound of gunfire wouldn't attract many zombies, making it easy to handle. Moreover, this place was ideal for defense. There should have been checkpoints set up on the road. Xiong Chuomo explained, "Stand behind me. We'll go in together." "Do you have any pets at home?" "No." They entered the gate, traversed the long verdant corridor, and stopped before the villa door. Li Jiawei stepped forward and fiddled with the electronic lock. The door soon clicked open. The interior of the villa was lavishly decorated, resplendent, and spotless, allowing Xiong Chuomo to witness what it truly meant to be wealthy. He conducted a rough inspection, confirming there were no threats nor any living people, not even the corpse of a zombie. "Where's the thing I need?" "In my bedroom, I'll get it." When Li Jiawei returned from the bedroom, he had 2 inflators, a power bank, and a data cable in his hands. "It seems your father is not here. As for the others in this villa area, I can roughly guess where they've gone." Xiong Chuomo recalled the rise of Yongxing Base from his previous life. Initially, it relied on a food processing plant, then recruited members, gradually expanding its power. They've probably grouped together and gone into the city. Li Jiawei, not giving Xiong Chuomo a chance to show off, continued on his own. In cheery manner, there were drivers delivering the freshest ingredients every day. After the zombie outbreak, no one was transporting food, and the residents of the manor basically had no habit of stockpiling food, so they had to go out in search of provisions. Xiong Chuomo was slightly taken aback, then, after a moment's thought, agreed. Wealthy people living in large villas surely had exquisite food and drink. They would never stockpile long-lasting items like canned food or instant noodles. Could someone who stockpiled such things in their villa even be considered rich? Perhaps the strawberries they ate were picked in the morning and airlifted by afternoon. So where do you think they went? Xiong Chuomo continued to test him. "I think they would go to Dongxing Food Group. One of the manor residents is the CEO of a Q City group. But once I charge my phone and make a call, can you give me a ride later? Whatever you want, any condition can be discussed." Li Jiawei looked at Xiong Chuomo. He had just checked the place where the firearms were stored and found it indeed empty. This made him even less confident about returning safely to the city. Xiong Chuomo stroked his chin. What the other had said matched the situation in his own memories. It seemed he wasn't just a rich playboy who knew only how to eat, drink, and have fun. Giving him a ride wasn't out of the question, since he himself needed to return to the city. What is the most taboo in the apocalypse? Not excessive mercy, but brainless deadweight teammates. Excessive mercy is at worst a double-edged sword. If the person you help knows gratitude, your team and influence will grow and expand rapidly. But if you help petty or rotten individuals, you will suffer backlash. It all comes down to your ability to discern and judge, and you must always keep a certain measure in mind. In the apocalypse, encountering a deadweight teammate is a guaranteed disaster. And this guy clearly had brains. He was no deadweight, especially with his wealthy and powerful father. "Do you have another falcon?" Xiong Chuomo didn't stand on ceremony and began naming his reward. "No, but there should be one in Villa 37. He was the one who recommended it to me." Li Jiawei quickly replied, afraid that Xiong Chuomo would refuse. "Fine. I don't have any other demands. Same condition as before, you just help me find someone." It wasn't that he didn't want to ask for other things, it was simply that he currently lacked nothing. Food. Not to mention the warehouse of supplies he had. With his level 2 superhuman strength, getting some food was trivial. Guns. The other's father would never agree, and even if he asked, it would be in vain. So the only option was to gather some intelligence first. Searching for one person alone in a vast city was like looking for a needle in a haystack. "Who are you looking for? Tell me, maybe I know them." Hearing this request for the second time, Li Jiawei's curiosity was piqued. The demand was too modest. He had expected a lion's share and was already prepared to be bled dry. Xiong Chuomo didn't hesitate. He would have to disclose it sooner or later. "The person's name is Tang Chuan. He's not a local of Q City. He came from Shu Province to work." Tang Chuan got it. Xiong Chuomo had gone to such lengths to find this man because Tang Chuan's awakened ability was extraordinary. His ability was the rather special spatial ability. It could store supplies, and food placed in the space had no expiration date. In his previous life, Tang Chuan had infiltrated another base, used his spatial ability to steal supplies, and eventually founded Kongmin Base, thriving and flourishing. To achieve rapid development in the future, he decided that the first ability he would devour after awakening his own was Tang Chuan's spatial ability. After a quick cleanup, the two arrived at Villa 37. Xiong Chuomo climbed over the backyard wall. The 4-meter-high fence was no trouble for a level 2 superhuman like him. He broke the security window in a few moves, entered the house, and finally found the Falcon in a second-floor bedroom. He also took 2 boxes of steel pellets, packed them into his backpack, and returned the same way. As he left, he gazed at the clusters of villas and couldn't help feeling that building a base here would require Every household had solar power, there was mountain spring water to drink, vegetable gardens could be planted in the villa yards, and there was only one road leading up the mountain. As a base, it was simply perfect. Unfortunately, it was too far from the city. Food was scarce, vegetables and fruits couldn't be grown overnight, and although there was some rice in the villas, they couldn't live on plain white rice every day, could they? Moreover, driving to and from the city took nearly 3 hours, and there simply wasn't enough energy to support multiple round trips by car right now. After all, the solar panels in the villas could only provide enough electricity for daily living. Charging a car was out of the question. Last but not least, Xiong Chuomo needed zombie hordes to improve and evolve. If his evolution speed failed to keep up with the zombies, the worst case would be falling prey to stronger humans or becoming zombie food. Leaving Shiri Mountain, he drove back toward the city. Although the city had lost power, the base stations still had backup power that could last a while. After 7 phone calls, Li Jiawei finally got through. Dad, where are you? Are you okay? I'm at Uncle Huang's food processing plant. Where are you? I'm fine, no need to pick me up. I'll be there soon. Your father is really good to you, Xiong Chuomo said enviously. His own parents had already started new families, and they hadn't come to see him for many years. He regarded himself as an orphan, never bothering them, and had no idea whether they were alive or dead now. Isn't it normal for parents to be good to their children? Li Jiawei said matter-of-factly. Can't you read the room? Xiong Chuomo's forehead broke out in a few black lines. At that moment, several figures appeared in the middle of the road ahead. Look out! Ahead! Li Jiawei, sitting in the passenger seat, cried out in alarm. With his level 2 superhuman vision, Xiong Chuomo could clearly see what was ahead. His expression unchanged, he gripped the steering wheel firmly, kept the accelerator pressed, and drove straight. Li Jiawei sensed that the speed did not decrease, so he instinctively reached out to yank the steering wheel, yet it remained utterly immobile. A thunderous boom erupted. 2 silhouettes were hurled over 30 meters away, crashing heavily onto the ground, their limbs twisted in an eerily contorted manner. The windshield was splattered with a generous amount of greenish viscous fluid. A sharp shriek came from beside him. The voice was so piercing it seemed to threaten the eardrums. What are you? Those 2 were zombies. Xiong Chuomo scolded, though he could understand Li Jiawei's reaction. It was the 3rd day since the zombie outbreak. As denizens of a civilized society, when someone suddenly appeared on the road, many evasive maneuvers were instinctive, hard to suppress in a flash. If he hadn't been the one driving, but rather Li Jiawei in that scenario, he would likely have either slammed the brakes or yanked the wheel hard. Either choice would probably have led to the same fate as the roadside vehicles, rolling over or crashing into the guardrails, becoming a zombie's meal. Sorry, it was just instinct. Li Jiawei stammered, explaining himself. As someone born into privilege, as long as he didn't commit any major transgressions, he could coast through life effortlessly. Thus, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, he appeared even more at a loss than ordinary people. In Longwa, after all, money couldn't buy everything. His family was wealthy, surrounded by wolves and tigers lying in wait. The slightest flaw could invite a concerted attack, exhausting the entire family. Light losses meant a stock crash and massive asset shrinkage. Severe ones could lead to overnight bankruptcy. And given their less than spotless past, they were all the more vulnerable. After all, most of their previous assets had been stashed abroad, leaving their domestic development neglected. Just be more careful next time. This isn't the old society anymore. Besides, no normal person stands stock still in the middle of the road. Xiong Chuomo recalled their cooperation and softened his tone. In peacetime, given Li Jiawei's family background, he could not flout the law with impunity. But now in the apocalypse, those shackles had been cast off. Perhaps he might find them useful later, especially his father, who had been a figure of some importance in his previous life. You have a point. Li Jiawei nodded repeatedly. By the way, the power's out in the city. By tomorrow, phone networks will go down. When you have news, use the latest long-wave phone to send satellite messages to me. Hey, erase my phone ID and number. Write it down. Do you have the latest long-wave phone there? Xiong Chuomo wondered how the other would notify him if they found information on Tang Chuan. I do have one. But is this long-wave phone really that impressive? Li Jiawei was somewhat skeptical. He had lived abroad until recently and had always used Ligwa phones. Last year on October 17, 2026, Longway Corporation launched a satellite into space. Only the latest Longway phones were equipped with satellite capabilities. At the spectacle, netizens joked Longway Corporation launched a dedicated satellite just to push their new phone. But despite the banter, their actions spoke louder. During the initial release, the phones were nearly impossible to get hold of. The satellite function was immensely powerful, not only achieving the leap from 5G to 6G, but also allowing users within Longwa to access and browse public networks of any country worldwide without needing a VPN. While wars raged abroad, Longwa enjoyed peace and prosperity. The glorious scene of peace stretches for 30,000 li. The bright moon shines on ancient and present days, was vividly showcased to people of all nations, and Longwa began to emerge as the world's center. Xiong Chuomo nodded and briefly explained a satellite phone call works within a 1-kilometer radius. From any corner of Q City, a satellite message can be received, but not beyond that. Got it. After a silent journey, the two arrived at Dongxing food processing plant. Xiong Chuomo dropped him off safely and turned back. Driving all the way to Bin Garden residential area, he had rented an apartment there on the second day after. The supplies he had purchased were stored in 2 batches, so when moving there wasn't much cargo to transport. Bin Garden was a relatively upscale neighborhood, each unit with a private balcony. The small solar panels he had bought were installed on the balcony. Beyond that, he chose this place for a more crucial reason. In his previous life, several renowned supernatural ability users had appeared near this community. Moving here might allow him to encounter them and recruit allies. A water pavilion gets the moonlight first, as the saying goes. To rent this apartment, Xiong Chuomo paid a 2-month deposit and 1 month's rent, totaling over 40,000 Longwa dollars. If not for the substantial wage increase in the first half of last year, nearly 2,000 per month, he wouldn't have been able to take out such a loan and rent this place. As everyone knows, in the apocalypse, renting is equivalent to buying. This expense was well worth it. Back inside, he took out the inflator from his backpack and connected it to the solar battery. The electricity stored by the small solar panels was barely enough to charge a phone or provide lighting. Daily power needs were out of the question. He filled the gas canister, left the extra falcon in the apartment, and carried only one on him. A full canister could fire 8 to 10 times, more than enough for his abilities. After a simple lunch, Xiong Chuomo gathered his gear and headed to the next destination, the municipal hospital. He aimed to collect enough ability crystal cores to evolve to level 2 before the collective zombie evolution. But first he needed to go to the Public Security Bureau to get a few pistols for self-defense. Though pistols couldn't kill zombies, their threat to humans was absolute. Even with his level 2 superhuman strength, a shot to a vital area would still finish him. After an hour, he arrived at B Street Public Security Bureau. It was quite deserted. When he saw a few zombie security guards lingering near the side entrance, he breathed a sigh of relief. It meant no one had visited yet, otherwise he'd have to try his luck at the district police stations. Xiong Chuomo decided against dealing with the guard zombies, opting instead to climb in through the main entrance and let them stand guard. He checked the door plates all the way to the 4th floor before finding the director's office. Unfortunately, the office door was a security door, impossible to enter. The windows were all on the outside. The idea of climbing in through a window flickered through his mind, but was immediately dismissed. After checking around, only the archives room was unlocked, but it contained nothing but office supplies and documents. It seemed this trip was for naught. He could only head to the district police stations. The Armed Forces Department had plenty of firearms and ammunition, but he couldn't get them on his own. These places were on high alert since the outbreak, and rescue teams would assemble tomorrow. At most, he could only obtain a security pistol. The Falcon was more powerful than a pistol, but too bulky, less convenient, and portable. With 5 hours left until sunset, Xiong Chuomo drove toward the nearest F District Police Station. Along the way, he saw survivors moving about, maintaining an unspoken distance. Even if strangers saw each other's food haul, they might ask, "Where did you get that?" Then say no more. There was no robbery or violence. Xiong Chuomo knew this was the early apocalypse where everyone would rob. What if the victim fought back and he got injured? There was no hospital to go to. Anyone brave enough to leave a safe house and scavenge for food would be carrying some form of protection. Moreover, the supplies in every city were enough to feed all residents for 10 to 15 days. Since most city dwellers had been infected and became zombies, who needed no food, that left a massive surplus. What could sustain all residents for 10 days now could sustain survivors for 1 to 2 months. Resources were naturally, there was no reason to fight over food. But alas, such harmony would not last long. After driving for over 10 minutes, Xiong Chuomo arrived at the local police station. Naturally, the district police station could not compare to the Central Police Bureau. Its office building was at most 3 stories high. He easily bypassed the zombies at the entrance of the duty room and headed towards the office building. Since the zombie outbreak occurred in the early morning, the office building was also devoid of people. He pried open a window on the 2nd floor and entered, finally finding in a jacket pocket inside the meeting room a Type 64 police pistol with 7 rounds, 2 of which were blanks. Xiong Chuomo was overjoyed. This was already a bountiful harvest. If the pistol he had found were a Type 05 police pistol, then all his efforts would have been in vain. After all, the firepower of that pistol was truly underwhelming. The reason he had first gone to the police bureau was to get his hands on a Type 92 police pistol. With luck, he might even obtain a Type 79 police submachine gun. For now, having a Type 64 was decent enough. Xiong Chuomo continued searching, eventually finding one Type 64, 5 Type 05s, and a number of rubber bullets. Although he somewhat disdained the Type 05, it still held deterrent value for those who didn't know better. After all, they all looked like guns more or less the same. Regrettably, the number of live rounds was too few, though there was a huge pile of rubber bullets. He loaded the 5 live rounds into the Type 64's magazine, pocketed the gun, and stowed the rest into his backpack. Without lingering, Xiong Chuomo drove towards the city hospital. The city hospital was located in District D, about a half-hour drive from his current location. In pre-apocalyptic times, it would have taken at least an hour and a half. Approaching the city hospital, the number of zombies on the road gradually increased. Parking the car by the roadside, Xiong Chuomo held a shield in his left hand and a sharp axe in his right, advancing step by step toward the hospital. My goodness, there are so many zombies. Xiong Chuomo chopped down the zombie lunging at him with a single axe stroke, then raised his riot shield to block the pounce of 2 more zombies, swung his axe, and killed another zombie charging from the side. The hospital had several departments. The front buildings were manageable, but once he stepped into the inpatient department, his axe never ceased. Every swing killed a zombie, and he was constantly besieged by at least 4 zombies at a time. Even with his strength as a level 2 superhuman, he was utterly exhausted. I can't go on. Let's retreat and reassess. After fighting this far, he had only advanced to the door of the 3rd ward. In the distance, zombies continuously poured out from every room. After over 10 minutes of intense combat, the thought of retreat began to creep into his mind. The Q city he was in had a total population of over 9 million, with nearly 3 million in the urban area. If one assumed a 50 zombie conversion rate, that would mean over 1 million zombies. Judging by the number of beds and rooms on the 1st floor, the city hospital contained at least several thousand, even nearly 10,000 zombies. Each floor held around 600 to 700 zombies. How terrifying. It seemed he had gotten a bit cocky. The hospital was nothing like a KTV. The doors and windows couldn't withstand the destruction of level 0 zombies, and the patients were all the elderly, weak, sick, and disabled, making them even more defenseless. The entire hospital was a gluttonous feast for zombies. Who knew if a level 3 zombie had already evolved inside? At this thought, Xiong Chuomo hesitated no more. He fought while retreating until he broke free from the zombie horde, then turned and fled at top speed. Alas, what a pity. Despite killing so many zombies, he only harvested 11 energy crystals. The drop rate was far lower than at Emperor Dragon KTV. However, considering that there were still some zombie corpses he hadn't had time to loot, it was understandable. The general direction he had chosen was correct. He just hadn't anticipated that there would be so many zombies in this. After all, he had rarely been sick since childhood and never went to hospitals. In his past life, his strength was too weak, and he dared not approach such places. Since he couldn't conquer this place, he might as well switch hospitals. Q City had over a dozen hospitals of various sizes, and even more if private clinics were included. Xiong Chuomo took out his long-way phone, checked the satellite map, and selected a university-affiliated hospital near Riverside Garden residential area. He drove to the vicinity and parked. This hospital was much smaller in scale compared to the city hospital. Just as before, Xiong Chuomo first cleared the surrounding zombies, steadily advancing. In less than 10 minutes, he arrived at the inpatient building. Peering inside from the window, based on the number of beds on the 1st floor, the total beds in the entire building were at most 300 to 500. At the maximum, including caregivers and nurses on duty, the number of zombies would definitely not exceed 1,000. Moreover, they were scattered across different floors. As long as he didn't make too much noise and advanced steadily with careful steps, preventing the zombies from surrounding him, he could at least ensure his own safety. Stepping into the building, the unique smell of disinfectant mixed with the stench of decay and acrid odors served as a constant reminder of the extreme danger of this place. The shape of the entire inpatient building was like a U-shaped structure. Xiong Chuomo arrived at the center, quickly dispatched 3 zombies wandering in the nurse station, gently pushed open the first nurse's room beside the station, confirmed there were no zombies inside, and closed the door. In such an environment, the worst thing was to be caught in a pincer attack by zombies. With every step forward, he needed to kill all the zombies in every room to ensure his escape route was safe. He went to the 2nd office and the 3rd storage room. Both were empty. On the 1st floor of the inpatient building, the far right corner held stairs and an elevator, while the far left had an emergency staircase. Xiong Chuomo fell into deep thought about how to proceed next. There were stairs on both sides. If he made any noise, he might alert the zombies on the 2nd floor. After all, the hospital environment was equivalent to a slow-paced bar. Almost unobstructed, there might even have evolved mutant zombies. He had no confidence in silently killing a mutant zombie. If the fight turned into a stalemate, it would be dangerous. If only I had more helpers. As he pondered, such a thought inevitably came to mind. After thinking it over, Xiong Chuomo could only resort to his old method, finding something to block the stair exits. This would at least provide an extra layer of security. No sooner said than done. He quietly lifted a bench, placed it horizontally on the right corridor, then moved stools from the nurse station in front of the bench, and finally wheeled out 2 rolling stretchers from the storage room to prop against the bench horizontally. Thus, even if an accident occurred, it wouldn't threaten him for a short while. After finishing all this, he silently crept toward a zombie about 20 meters away that was standing dazed. When he was 3 or 4 meters from the zombie, Xiong Chuomo suddenly accelerated, raised his hand, and brought it down. The zombie was killed without any reaction. Ever since he learned that zombies could also detect prey through heat sensing, he had become increasingly adept at dealing with them. Even in this dead silent environment, the noise from killing a zombie did not alert any nearby zombies. The closer he got to the wards, the more zombies there were. As he reached the second ward, a zombie lurking in a blind spot behind the private bathroom door let out a roar and lunged at him. The zombie's roar seemed like a command to attack or a bugle call for a charge. Damn it! Xiong Chuomo swung his right hand, killing the zombie that had ambushed him. With that roar, the surrounding zombies seemed to receive a signal, howling towards the sky. Like a domino effect, it was set off with a single touch. In an instant, the cries of zombies spread to every corner of the first floor. The scene was remarkably similar to what he had encountered at the city hospital earlier. At that time, he had also been surrounded by a continuous stream of zombies pouring out from the hospital rooms after the initial roar. Based on the zombies he had killed earlier, the roar of a level 0 zombie could be heard roughly within a range of 7 to 8 meters. As long as one stayed beyond this range, other zombies would not react in unison. In his previous life as a low-level personnel, he always moved in conjunction with the main force. The main force's actions did not require zombies to summon their companions. The commotion caused by their movement alone could attract large groups of zombies. Even when small teams executed special missions, they used abilities to snipe zombies from afar. Thus, he had only heard of zombies summoning their companions, but the specifics were unclear to him. Otherwise, with his weak strength, if he had witnessed it, he surely would not have survived. After his rebirth, the environments he faced were either open areas or the kind of compartments found in KTVs. This was the first time he encountered a relatively dense environment like a hospital. At this moment, besides the zombies in the hospital room charging at him, zombies began to emerge from rooms 3 and 4 as well. Xiong Chuomo made a swift decision to retreat from room 2, killing the zombies that charged and first fighting while retreating until he reached the nurse station to ensure a safe escape route. Moreover, because of his decisive withdrawal, he only drew the aggression of the zombies from rooms 3, 4, 5, 0, and 6, causing the zombies pouring out from the back rooms to lose their targets and wander aimlessly in the corridor. Fortunately, they are only level 0 zombies, and not too many of, otherwise I would have to change locations again. He couldn't help but breathe a slight sigh of relief, knowing that as long as he didn't make too much noise, the zombies from afar wouldn't swarm towards him. Thus, Xiong Chuomo only attracted small waves of zombies, each time resolving them at fixed locations. After more than half an hour, he had cleared the first floor. After killing nearly 100 zombies, he only harvested 9 energy crystals, which seemed even less. However, considering that most of the hospital residents were the elderly, weak, sick, or disabled, it was likely that they all turned into zombies in an instant during the outbreak. If that were the case, then his choice of target was wrong. He should not have chosen the hospital or the old residential area. Instead, he should target places with more young adults. For instance, KTVs, collective employee dormitories, bustling streets, or university towns. In such places, the drop rate for killing zombies would be higher, and it would be easier to encounter mutated zombies that dropped ability crystals. However, these were just guesses that needed to be verified. If the second floor was as pitifully low in drop rates as the first, he would have to choose another place. Xiong Chuomo cleaned up and found 2 boxes of bottled alcohol in the storage room, leaving the other medicines untouched. He took out 6 bottles of alcohol and placed them in the side of his backpack, where he kept drinks. With these 6 bottles of alcohol, he might still be able to set a fire. He walked slowly up to the second floor, using the escape stairway on the far left. Each floor's escape stairway had a small balcony, which served as a smoking area. He was currently at the intersection of the factory shape on the far left of the second floor, but he was now facing a dilemma. Advancing in any direction would likely leave him cut off from escape, putting his life in danger. However, if he made noise here to attract zombies to the first floor, the sound might carry up the stairs to higher floors, bringing in a large horde of zombies. After a slight consideration, Xiong Chuomo ultimately decided to make noise to attract the zombies. If there were too many, he could always abandon this place and find another. Just as he was about to take action, an idea suddenly flashed in his mind. Since he wanted to attract zombies, why not set a trap in advance? Pull in a big wave. With that thought, Xiong Chuomo immediately went downstairs, returning to the storage room, where he had found the alcohol bringing all 2 boxes of alcohol to the exit of the first floor's escape stairway. He also transported the bedsheets, pillows, and duvet covers from every hospital room to the staircase entrance. All wooden products and flammable materials were piled up along the stairs. At the staircase entrance, he left an open area concentrating all flammable materials from the first floor in that spot. He then moved some electronic devices, equipment, and bed frames to block the entrance, leaving only a gap for one person to pass. Finally, he used some tools from the first floor to create a simple alcohol lamp as an ignition device. After finishing all this, Xiong Chuomo stood at the staircase entrance and let out a few howls, worried that the zombies couldn't hear him. While howling, he struck the metal handrail of the stairs with the back of his axe, producing a crisp metallic clanging sound. After all this, it was conservative to estimate that even the zombies on the top floor could hear the commotion here. Not long after, the zombies on the second floor near the stairs tumbled down. The first zombie to fall on the middle platform didn't have the chance to get up before being used as a mat by the subsequent zombies piling up. Xiong Chuomo took a rough glance and saw only a dozen zombies, which was not enough to set a fire, so he continued to strike the handrail to attract more zombies' attention. Before long, zombies began to walk down from the middle platform. Xiong Chuomo had no choice but to stop hitting and began to shout loudly. At the same time, he opened the alcohol bottles and quickly poured the contents over the entire area. After doing all this, he retreated to the gap, while not forgetting to shout a few times to attract the zombies' attention. Now he just had to wait for the zombies to come to their doom. He didn't have to wait long. The leading zombie was already in front of him. When the zombie was just a few steps away, it seemed to catch the scent of a living person, letting out an excited roar as it lunged towards him. Accompanied by this roar, it was like igniting a vast wilderness. In an instant, the entire staircase echoed with the successive howls of zombies. Xiong Chuomo calmly slaughtered the zombies, coming to their demise. In this environment of one man guarding the past, 10,000 zombies cannot get through. A single blast shield could block a horde of zombies. After continuously killing dozens of zombies, the pile of zombie bodies eventually blocked the only gap, relieving some pressure. Bang, bang, bang. More and more zombies gathered in this narrow space, starting to charge in all directions. The equipment he used to fence felt increasingly overwhelmed. That's enough, I can't be greedy anymore. Thinking this, Xiong Chuomo put away his axe, turned around, and ran quickly, pulling out a windproof lighter from his pocket and rushing to where he had placed the alcohol lamp. He picked up the alcohol lamp, turned, and threw it into the crowd of zombies. The entire process took less than 3 seconds. Boom. Because he had lingered long enough, allowing the alcohol to evaporate fully, it ignited instantly. The pale blue flames roared like a demon, devouring everything in their path. Even as Xiong Chuomo ran out of the hospital building, he didn't stop his pace. He had initially placed a few oxygen tanks inside, hoping not to waste anything. Under such high temperatures, an explosion was likely to occur. He did not stop until he reached a relatively open area about 200 to 300 meters away from the hospital. If an explosion were to occur, the sound would definitely attract nearby zombies. Had he remained in the hospital, he would likely have been trapped like a turtle in a jar. The moment Xiong Chuomo halted, several explosions echoed from behind, their roar akin to a gas tank blast. In the dead silence, the sound could probably be heard within a kilometer radius. I never imagined an oxygen tank explosion could be so powerful. Now I fear the entire building's zombies have. Gazing into the distance, the glass windows of several wards extending from the left corner on the first floor had been shattered, and the wall plaster had crumbled away. Thick smoke billowed from the epicenter, dust swirling in the air. It seemed the area would be inaccessible. A pang of regret struck him. If only he hadn't set off those oxygen tanks. Now not only would nearby zombies converge on the hospital at the sound, but even the zombies on every floor of the building would migrate downward, a situation far beyond his ability to handle alone. After all that effort, it was all in vain. With this thought, he wasted no time and drove toward an electronics processing factory on the outskirts of Zone B. He had worked there before. The pay was modest, but at least it provided meals and accommodation. 6 people shared each dormitory with 2 shifts rotating morning and night. The factory employed roughly 300 to 500 workers, and the workload was intense. Everyone collapsed into bed as soon as their shift ended. In such an environment, mutated zombies were highly likely to evolve. Upon arriving at the destination, he began by clearing the surrounding zombies as usual. Only after ensuring his escape route was safe did he head toward the employee dormitories. The dormitory buildings were a short distance from the factory. Of course, there were several other processing factories nearby, but their dormitories were scattered across different areas. Each factory had its own territory. There was no need to worry about attacks from zombie hordes in other territories. Even if the zombies evolved collectively, this place would still be an excellent grinding spot. There were 3 dormitory buildings, none more than 3 stories tall. They formed a shape with the entrance at the open. Stepping through the main gate, one could see a plaza of nearly 2 mu dotted with a few scattered vehicles. Nearly 200 zombies milled about, aimlessly wandering and staring blankly. Without disturbance, basic zombies mostly lingered near their original spots. This was why, once blocked at the door by zombies, one either had to wait for rescue or fight a bloody path out. There was no other choice. Xiong Chuomo slowly advanced from the outermost perimeter. At the same time, he took a cursory glance. Many rooms on each floor had their doors tightly shut, and some windows were even covered with curtains sealed airtight. There might still be survivors in some of them. But by the third day, even if there were survivors, they would probably be half dead from hunger. And if he ran into them, forget it. Cross that bridge when you come to it. He was here to collect ability crystals, not to go out of his way to rescue people. After spending over half an hour advancing halfway, and leaving enough strategic room, Xiong Chuomo approached the leftmost building, starting from the outermost room on the first floor and moving inward. Whenever there were too many zombies, he would pick up scrap on the spot and toss it to create noise, luring a small group away. Once the zombies separated from the main horde, it was time to harvest energy crystals. The only emergency staircase was at the center of each building. It took him just over 10 minutes to clear his way. He cast a brief glance up the stairs, then ignored it and continued clearing the zombies on the first floor. The first floor held the highest number of zombies, many of which were missing limbs, a testament to the brutality of the initial outbreak. After clearing nearly 60 of the zombies in the left building's first floor, he withdrew and began working on the right building. He advanced methodically, partly to avoid encountering any particularly formidable foes. He noticed that most zombies seemed concentrated near the staircase exit of the center building. The density there was significantly higher than in other areas, and most zombies had intact bodies, indicating they were from the earliest wave. This group was packed tightly together. He used the same tactic after clearing 60-70 in the right building. Now he needed to create some noise to lure the clustered zombies apart and scatter them across the plaza. Then he would take them down one by one. Xiong Chuomo picked up a few aluminum cans and, judging the distance, tossed them about 7 or 8 meters from the zombies. The clattering sound startled the outermost zombies, which began shuffling toward the noise. Just then a zombie suddenly burst out from the horde, moving noticeably faster than the others. Just a level 1. Xiong Chuomo judged it to be a level 1 zombie based on its speed. Even a mutated zombie was only slightly faster than a normal one at the same level, but from this short distance, he couldn't tell for sure. He continued to lure it. This level 1 zombie, faster than the level 0 ones, had already left the main group. Seizing the moment, Xiong Chuomo raised his axe, strode forward, and brought it down squarely on its head. Compared to a level 0 zombie, the level 1 showed markedly better reflexes. If it had been a level 0, it would have been cut down without any reaction to his sudden attack. This level 1 zombie sensed the presence of a living human and let out a guttural roar. But before the sound finished, it was felled by the axe. Xiong Chuomo wasn't satisfied. He struck again until the zombie's head was crushed like a rotten tomato. It seemed to be just an ordinary level 1 zombie. He had no time to search for the energy crystal. The zombie's roar had already attracted and gathered the 2 or 3 dozen nearby stragglers. He immediately retreated. But to his surprise, the zombies paid him no attention. Instead, they swarmed over the level 1 zombie's corpse and began feasting voraciously. It seemed that the corpse was more enticing to these level 0 zombies than he was. Even when he made noise, they acted as if their auditory system had been muted, completely ignoring him. Do low-level zombies consume the corpses of higher-level zombies to evolve? He had never witnessed such a phenomenon in either his past life or this one. As there was nothing else to do, he waited for the zombies to finish their meal. Before long, the corpse was reduced to mere. Unlike before, when zombies never turned over corpses, this one seemed like a rare delicacy to them. They had even evolved the behavior of flipping the body. Once the zombies finished eating and stopped moving, Xiong Chuomo tested them by tossing 2 empty bottles to the left and right. He first threw it to the left. The noise of the empty bottle hitting the ground instantly attracted a number of zombies. The next moment, 2 zombies broke away from the horde and darted toward the bottle's location. Xiong Chuomo's eyes lit up. These 2 zombies were clearly different in speed. One of them was a step faster. He hadn't expected it to actually work. The corpse of a higher-level zombie had produced 2 zombies of the same level. One of them had mutated during the evolution process. What an incredible gain. Then he continued by throwing an empty bottle to the right. The earlier commotion on the left had drawn some zombies, and the remaining ones were now attracted by the sound he made on the right. Thus, this small group of zombies split into 2 batches. He continued using this method until the zombies were completely separated. Xiong Chuomo lured the 2 level 1 zombies far away from the horde before stopping. For now, he only needed to wait a moment for the 2 zombies to naturally separate. If both were level 1 zombies, he naturally wouldn't have to be so cautious. With his level 2 superhuman strength, he could easily handle them. However, he was not yet certain whether the mutated zombie had awakened any special ability. Although the chance of a level 1 mutated zombie awakening an ability was slim, it could not be completely ignored. If it was a strength type, it would be easy to deal with, but if it was a defensive type, it would be somewhat troublesome. To be on the safe side, he decided to eliminate the weaker one first before focusing on the mutated zombie. After waiting about another 10 minutes, the two zombies finally separated. Xiong Chuomo circled around, approached the level 1 zombie, and struck it precisely with his axe, killing it instantly. The dying zombie's roar alarmed the mutated one, which howled and charged at him. Without daring to be careless, he firmly shielded his body with a riot shield, prioritizing defense while launching attacks only when possible. The zombie's sharp claws scraped against the shield, making a grating sound. He noticed that the attack wasn't very powerful, so he raised his axe high and brought it down heavily on the zombie's head. With a cracking sound, the zombie collapsed to the ground. It seemed its defense was also low, just an ordinary mutated zombie that hadn't evolved any special ability. See, he knew it. How could there be so many ability-possessing zombies among the low-level ones? He figured that last time in the KTV, he had encountered 2 speed-type mutated zombies at once, which had made him mistakenly think ability zombies were more common. Looking at the 5 shallow claw marks on his riot shield, it served as a reminder. If he encountered a level 2 mutated zombie, the shield would likely fail under the strain. He retrieved an ability crystal and an energy crystal from the zombie's head and pocketed them. Then, tucking his axe into his belt, he grabbed the 2 zombies by their feet and dragged them toward the zombie horde. He stopped not far from the horde, let out a few loud shouts, then turned and sprinted away. The noise instantly attracted a group of level 0 zombies, which pounced on the level 1 zombie's corpse and feasted. During this time, he kept himself busy collecting scraps that could make noise, preparing for his next hunt. After the zombies had feasted, Xiong Chuomo proceeded, as usual, first scattering the zombies. But this time he felt somewhat disappointed. Among this group of zombies, none had evolved into level 1. Could the previous zombie evolution have been just a coincidence? With this doubt in mind, after eliminating all the zombies, he discovered an interesting phenomenon. The drop rate of these zombies was astonishingly high, reaching 50. Probably they lacked sufficient experience points to evolve into level 1 zombies. Suddenly an idea flashed through his mind. He strode quickly to the level 1 zombie that had been gnawed down to its skeleton, crouched down, and searched carefully. Sure enough, as he had expected, there was no energy crystal. So that was it. The second time he lured the zombies to feed, he had taken the energy crystal from the level 1 zombie's body. That was why the zombies hadn't evolved. For him, now level 1 energy crystals were no longer of much use. Because for a level 2 superhuman to advance to level 3, one could either absorb 10 crystals of a higher level, that is 10 level 3 energy crystals, or absorb 100 crystals of the same level, level 2 energy crystals. If one chose to absorb lower level crystals, that is level 1 energy crystals, then 10,000 level 1 crystals would be required. Given his current circumstances, it was utterly impossible for him to hunt down 10,000 level 1 energy crystals. After all, with the drop rate, as it was by the current rate, gathering 10,000 would require killing at least 3,000 to 5,000 zombies. Was that even possible? Even if the drop rate increased to 100 after zombie evolution, if someone actually managed to gather 10,000 level 1 energy crystals and advanced to level 3 superhuman. Then for a level 3 superhuman to advance to level 4, one would need 100 million level 1 energy crystals. For high-level superhumans, low-level energy crystals had little use, which was also the main reason he had been able to advance to level 2 superhuman in his past life. He checked the time, it was nearly dusk. Xiong Chuomo did not linger, left the area, and drove back to Ben Huayuan Xiaoziu. Without electricity, he could only eat self-heating hot pot and self-heating rice. After eating, he poured out a few vitamins from the health supplement bottle to substitute for vegetables and fruits. In the apocalypse, the value of vegetables and fruits was far higher than that of canned meat. Similarly, a small bottle of vitamin C that cost a few Longwa coins would have its value multiplied countless times a month later. As for other medicines, honestly, they were completely unnecessary. After becoming a superhuman, his physical fitness was so much stronger than before that he hardly ever got sick. It could be said that most medicines were dispensable. On the contrary, certain health supplements could only be traded with energy crystals. After finishing his meal, he began to tally today's gains. He had collected a total of 114 energy crystals. Currently a total of 140 crystals. He had obtained 1 ability crystal, making a total of 5. He had already reached half his target. He needed to work harder to finish as soon as possible. As the sun set, the entire city gradually fell into darkness. After doing 500 push-ups and 400 squats, he drifted into sleep. Today was the 4th day since the apocalypse broke out. Xiong Chuomo woke up early. The weather had been good these past few days, and after 7 a.m., the sky began to lighten. After a simple wash and breakfast, he grabbed his equipment and went downstairs. He killed a few zombies that had followed him back to the community yesterday when he drove toward the processing plant. That's right. The zombies he had killed were deliberately lured into the community to help guard his vehicle. The journey was uneventful, and he smoothly arrived at the employee dormitory area of the processing plant before stopping. As usual, he made a round to clear any potential threats. Stepping through the gate, the zombie distribution was no different from yesterday. Xiong Chuomo advanced steadily and cautiously inward. After spending over an hour clearing all the zombies on the first floor, he harvested 21 energy crystals. Arriving at the rightmost building, Xiong Chuomo did not plan to go upstairs. Instead, he struck the stair railing to lure the zombies down. Since the stairs were located in the middle of each building, the knocking could only attract zombies near the stairwell, and soon the sound of zombies tumbling onto the mid-landing echoed through the stairwell. He raised the riot shield to protect himself and continued banging on the handrail. He didn't stop banging until the first zombie missed its step on the mid-landing and tumbled to the first floor. With the first one falling, the second, the third followed like dumplings being dropped into a pot, endless and continuous. Xiong Chuomo retreated far back, unable to distinguish which among the stumbling horde was a level 1 zombie and which was a mutant. He had no choice but to wait for the zombies to finish their dumpling dropping. Seeing that most of the zombies had reached the first floor, Xiong Chuomo decided not to wait any longer and used the previous method to scatter them. To his slight disappointment, there was no level 1 zombie among this group. He only harvested 17 energy crystals. Repeating the same tactic, he switched to the left building, banged on the stair handrail, and lured the zombies downstairs. This time he finally spotted a level 1 zombie. Suppressing his joy, he stealthily pulled it away from the main horde and swiftly struck it down with his axe. Carrying the corpse of the level 1 zombie, he threw it near the horde, then created a noise to attract them. What followed was patient waiting. The whole process gave him an inexplicable feeling of a fisherman baiting a spot. A strange, indescribable sensation. After the zombies had feasted, it was his turn to strike. He threw an aluminum can. One zombie broke away from the group and dashed toward the can. Xiong Chuomo's eyes lit up instantly. Indeed, the zombies had truly evolved. This meant that as long as he kept repeating this behavior, some zombies would inevitably become mutants during their evolution. Trading energy crystals for ability nuclei, it was incredibly profitable. It felt like discovering a major bug, and his heart surged with excitement. Forcing himself to calm down, he used the old method to isolate the level 1 zombie, killed it, and continued feeding the same group. He wanted to see what state the horde would evolve into after contributing 2 energy crystals in a row. He threw half a brick near the horde. 2 zombies, hearing the noise, broke away and rushed out. Jackpot! Jackpot! Xiong Chuomo gripped the axe tightly. Under the intense pressure, his knuckles turned slightly white. One of the zombies was noticeably faster than the other. A mutant zombie had truly evolved. This feeling was just too exhilarating. It was even harder for him to contain himself than discovering a loophole in the lottery. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. As usual, he brought the 2 zombies far away from the horde. After dealing with the ordinary one, he set about handling the mutant. Looking at the pale red symmetrical core in his hand, he was overjoyed. He happily pocketed it. Now he had 6 ability nuclei. Oh, perhaps he could reach the goal of 10 today. He threw the 2 corpses near the horde and continued farming pigs. Once the zombies were fattened up, it would be their doom. After 2 cycles, Xiong Chuomo discovered another surprise. During their 4th cannibalization, the horde evolved into 3 level 1 zombies. The original number of 27 had shrunk to 16, and after these 16 devoured the 3 level 1 corpses, they directly evolved into 7 level 1 zombies. 2 of them were even mutants. Now handling them alone was a bit difficult. With his strength as a level 2 superhuman, he could even deal with ordinary level 2 zombies, so he naturally wasn't afraid of these level 1 ones. But the key was that mutant zombies were among them. If they evolved an ability, he really couldn't handle it. He had to be extremely careful when dealing with zombies, ensuring 0 casualties. Otherwise, he would either have to cut off his own limb and become a cripple or watch helplessly as he turned into a zombie. Xiong Chuomo thought about it and decided he couldn't ignore them. He had to eliminate these threats first. Otherwise, if some special circumstance cut off his escape route, he would be finished. Unless he wanted to switch to another area. He had finally cleared the first floor of zombies. How could he just switch? Mutant zombies had keener senses than ordinary ones. Capitalizing on this, he exploited a perceptual blind spot among the zombies. Xiong Chuomo threw a pebble about 16 meters away from the horde. The sharp sound of the pebble hitting the ground alerted 2 mutant zombies. They left the horde and dashed toward the source of the noise. After 3 consecutive lures, he nearly brought the 2 mutant zombies to the main gate. As before, once they naturally separated, Xiong Chuomo gauged the distance and created more noise to split them even further than struck. If a level 1 zombie could only howl once before being hacked to death, a level 1 mutant was capable of launching a counterattack. After dealing with those 2, he dug out 2 ability nuclei. He returned and killed the remaining level 1 zombies. Facing the remaining 9 level 0 zombies this time, he didn't overfeed them. He only dropped 1 level 1 corpse. When he noticed one of the zombies stop after a few bites, Xiong Chuomo didn't hesitate and threw a stone near that. The zombie indeed lunged toward the stone while the others ignored it and continued devouring the corpse. I should have thought of that. Xiong Chuomo felt slightly annoyed upon seeing this. Earlier, while waiting for the zombies to feed, he had also noticed this phenomenon. A few zombies stopped eating after a few bites at that time. He didn't think much of it. After all, the sight of zombies feeding was horrifying, a soul-deep terror that he dared not watch for long. Now he realized it must be that the zombies' experience points had reached a threshold. After a few bites they had enough to level up. Having become level 1 zombies, they naturally lost interest in corpses of the same level. After some zombies leveled up, he could have lured the monsters ahead of time without waiting for all of them to finish feeding, wasting a lot of time. This time the efficiency of killing zombies increased dramatically. The moment a zombie stopped feeding was his cue to strike. Until noon, intense hunger snapped him out of his excited state, and he finally stopped farming pigs and butchering pigs. After this period of work, although he harvested only a small number of energy crystals, just 13, he had collected a full 4 ability nuclei. A great harvest. He returned to the car, had lunch, and continued his work. By late afternoon, Xiong Chuomo could no longer lure an entire group at once. The remaining zombies were scattered in 2s and 3s on the 2nd and 3rd floors, no longer posing a threat. He had to clear room by room, also roughly searching each room for any useful supplies, such as a long-way phone, until he reached the 3rd floor of the central building in front of a room near the right wing. He killed the 3 zombies guarding the door and gently knocked. "Is anyone inside?" There was no response from inside. Utter silence. Xiong Chuomo knocked hard with the back of his axe, producing a loud noise. "Someone's there." Xiong Chuomo was slightly taken aback, never expecting that someone was indeed inside, and their voice did not sound weak at all. Earlier he had noticed the peculiarity of this room. While other rooms had their doors wide open, this one was sealed tight, with locked doors and windows, even the window covered by a bedsheet, making it stand out starkly from the rest. If this discovery alone led him to suspect that someone was most likely alive inside, the several zombies guarding the entrance confirmed it beyond doubt. Soon the door opened. 4 men emerged, accompanied by a nauseating stench that invaded his nostrils, hitting him like a wave of foulness. Having already grown accustomed to the post-apocalyptic environment's odor, even he was forced back several steps by the putrid smell. His stomach churned violently, nearly causing him to vomit the lunch he had just eaten. Xiong Chuomo frowned, scrutinizing the 4 men before him, his look of puzzlement deepening. Today marked the 4th day of the apocalypse. Logically, if someone went 3 days and nights without food or water, even if not starved to death, they would be too weak to walk. Yet the 4 before him appeared vigorous, with ruddy complexions, far from people who had starved for days. Suddenly recalling the foul stench and the 4 men emerging from the 6-person dormitory, a horrifying thought flashed through his mind. Terrified, he instinctively retreated another step. "You." Xiong Chuomo opened his mouth, but ultimately could not bring himself to speak the words. The leader of the 4, noticing Xiong Chuomo's wavering expression, inwardly cursed. He turned his head slightly, signaling the other 3 with his eyes. The others nodded in response. They hadn't come empty-handed. Some held wooden planks, others grasped steel pipes taken from bed frames, and one clutched a fruit knife. They uniformly advanced a step toward him. "What? Want to start something?" Xiong Chuomo's eyes narrowed as he swept his gaze over the 4 faces. He had only been stunned by the horrifying realization that they were alike, not truly afraid of them. Even in his previous life, during the 47 days of survival, he had never heard of anyone resorting to such measures. And it was only the 4th day? Still, upon deeper thought, he could understand it. The places he had chosen were mostly crowded locations: KTVs, hospitals, communal dorms. If the people in that KTV had not been rescued by him, they might have walked the same path. But even if they did, it would only prolong their miserable existence. In the end, they would still face the judgment of death. Just a matter of time. The 4 men, intimidated by Xiong Chuomo's fierce stare, quickly lowered their heads, their advance halting abruptly. The man in the orange vest suddenly recalled that this person had killed multiple zombies single-handedly, a true wolf. Facing him would be like offering themselves as prey. His heart filled with hesitation. The leader, hardening his resolve, turned and glared fiercely at the 3 cowering men. "See that weapon in his hand? If we had such a weapon, would we have been trapped here so long? Would we have had to?" He paused mid-sentence. "Why don't we just..." Before he could finish, Xiong Chuomo struck. "Did he think I was deaf? Whispering like that?" He stepped forward and brought his axe down on the leader's head, so fast that the 4 had no time to react. With such force that half the man's skull was split open, the momentum carrying through to sever his left shoulder and arm. Blood splattered everywhere, red and white matter pooling on the ground. Before Xiong Chuomo could strike again, the man in the orange vest dropped to his knees, knocking his head 3 times against the floor with a thud. "Boss, it's not my fault. He forced us." The other 2, snapping out of their stupor, immediately threw down their weapons and knelt, kowtowing for mercy. It was all his doing. We had no choice. Do I look like a fool? Xiong Chuomo watched their farcical performance expressionlessly, raising his axe to finish them off. Wait, I have something to say. The man in the orange vest looked up and shouted, his forehead covered in sweat. Oh, is that so? Then speak. If your words aren't pleasing, I won't show mercy. This man was quick-witted and fast to kneel. Xiong Chuomo wanted to hear what last words he had. At such close range, if the man made any suspicious move, he would strike without hesitation. Even if the man pulled out a gun, he could kill him before the trigger was pulled. Unless he had awakened an ability. Probably not. With that thought, Xiong Chuomo tightened his grip on the riot shield, ready for anything. Boss, it's like this. You've already figured it out, right? Yes, to survive, we were forced to do it. When we thought of attacking you just now, it was because we feared this secret getting out. Now we don't have to worry because you're one of us. If you spare us this once, our lives will be yours. Tell us to go east, and we won't go west. He knocked his head again on the ground. The other two followed suit. Xiong Chuomo understood the implication. They had originally been afraid of their killings being exposed, and wanted to silence him. Now that he had killed one of them, he too was a murderer belonging to the same category. That's different. You wanted to kill me. This was self-defense, Xiong Chuomo said mockingly. At these words, the three turned ashen, trembling uncontrollably. However, what you said does make some sense. What are your names? At this, hope glimmered in their eyes as they quickly answered. Zhou Peng, Wang Hao, Jiang Zhengwei. Go. I don't take in worthless people. If you want to be my men, you need to prove yourselves. What kind of achievement? Zhou Peng, wearing the orange vest, asked hurriedly. Leaving aside other achievements, at the very least you need to survive. Xiong Chuomo spoke with indifference. These three were clever, ruthless, and unscrupulous. Taking them as underlings was not impossible. But if they could beg for their lives today, they could betray him tomorrow for another reason. Moreover, they were weak. Taking them in might mean having to look after them, making them extra burdens. Their names weren't familiar from his past life. He had no interest in investing in them. The three thanked him, quickly rose, and walked past him toward the stairs. Whether they lived or died made no difference to him. Dying would end it all. If they lived, he wondered how long they could survive, and whether they would bring him any surprises. He continued clearing the corridor of zombies and searching rooms for supplies. In his spare time, he saw them rummaging through piles of corpses. Soon enough, they found a car key, got into a pickup truck parked in the square, and drove away in a cloud of dust. Inside the pickup truck, the three who had been silent for a long time finally couldn't hold back. Brother Peng, do you think we should really follow the boss? Wang Hao asked Zhou Peng. He felt that he was already free and would rather go solo than be someone's lackey. Jiang Zhengwei, who was focused on driving, had to divert his attention to listen to their conversation. Zhou Peng didn't follow his lead, but instead posed a different question. Did you see the number of zombies earlier? I did. Other than us, everyone else in the factory must have turned into zombies. Luckily, we listened to Brother Li and didn't go out, or would be like them. But it's a pity he was too impulsive. Wang Hao shook his head, appearing somewhat regretful, though he had no intention of avenging him. When I was looking for the car keys earlier, I noticed that all the zombies' heads had been split open by the same sharp weapon. That means all those zombies were killed by our boss. To have such a formidable boss, what more could you ask for it? Zhou Peng laid out his thoughts. Isn't he just relying on his weapons and gear? In terms of age, aren't we all older than him? Wang Hao said dismissively. Despite being shocked by the number of zombies, he was confident he could kill a few a day and wipe them out in a few days. Zhou Peng glanced at Wang Hao and silently made a decision. What was your reaction when the boss struck, brother? Me? I was standing behind and didn't see. Wang Hao tried to deflect, though his tone had lost. Fast. He was too fast. Brother Li had no time to defend. Jiang Zhengwei, who had been driving, suddenly spoke. If it were me, I'd be dead for sure. Exactly. I think he might be from a special forces search and rescue mission. The world is in chaos now. Oh, anything can happen, right? Zhou Peng said this with a hint of emotion. He never imagined he would do anything to survive. Everything he had experienced in the past few days had shattered his worldview. Where are we heading now? Wang Hao dropped the previous topic and asked about the next move. I observed earlier that all the zombie corpses had smashed heads, so the brain must be their weak point. First, we'll go to the construction site for hammers, then hit the supermarket for supplies. After a thorough search, Xiong Chuomo found only a few daggers, 2 high-capacity power banks, and 4 barrels of gasoline in a storage room. He refueled Lambertide, placed the remaining 3.5 barrels in the back seat. As the sun was about to set, he decided to check out the university-affiliated hospital from yesterday on his way back. As soon as he approached the hospital, Xiong Chuomo immediately turned around. The zombies were densely packed in endless sea, numbering at least 6,000 or 7,000. Returning to Riverside Garden Community, a few zombies trailed behind the car, as usual. He unloaded the gasoline, honked the horn to lure the zombies near the vehicle, letting them guard it for him. Just as he was carrying the gasoline to the 4th floor and about to open his door, the neighbor's door suddenly clicked open. Xiong Chuomo immediately set down the gasoline, raised his riot shield, and stepped back cautiously. On the fourth day, a few people had begun to awaken abilities, and he didn't want to be caught off guard. Don't be nervous. I just want some food. I haven't eaten all day, came a slightly weak yet pleasant female voice from behind the door, followed by a head peeking through the crack. A flash of admiration crossed Xiong Chuomo's eyes. The woman looked around 20, perhaps slightly younger than him, with starry eyes, willow-like brows, a petite and delicate nose, slightly dry, thin lips, and fair, soft skin with a touch of baby fat that made one want to kiss her. Her expression was slightly tense, giving off an air of needing protection. Oh, Xiong Chuomo answered dazedly. As he was about to take out some food from his backpack, a sudden thought struck him. Damn, are you that easily swayed by a woman? He cursed inwardly, stopping his search, and asked, are you alone at home? What if this was a honey trap? What if there were several men behind the door waiting to ambush him once he let his guard down? After all, searching for food required freeing a hand, either to set down the shield or the weapon. The woman looked visibly flustered, bit her lip, gave him a deep look, and nodded slightly. I don't believe you unless you open the door and come out. Xiong Chuomo noticed her fleeting panic and sensed something suspicious. The woman hesitated, but eventually opened the door and stepped out gracefully. Stop. Stay right there. He peered into the room and saw no one. Even if someone were hiding, the distance was enough for him to react. He set down his axe, took out 2 self-heating hot pots from his backpack, moving slowly while keeping an eye on her. Though he had put down the axe, he still had a cleaver at his waist. If she made any aggressive move, he could counter in an instant. This was his test. But the woman seemed oblivious, her eyes fixed on the hot pots in his hand. Xiong Chuomo placed the packaged food on the ground and slid the 2 hot pots across the marble floor to her feet. After doing this, he gave her a long look, opened the door to bring in the gasoline, and was about to close the door. Wait, is there anything else? Here, take this. A 24-karat gold bracelet slid to his feet in the same manner. He bent down to pick it up, a strange smile spreading across his face. A gold bracelet. Looks like I got the better deal. The woman didn't respond. He gave her one last glance before closing the door. He had plenty of food in his room, enough for 3 to 5 months. By taking it out of his backpack, he was signaling, see, I didn't bring back much. This reduced the risk of others coveting his supplies and avoided unnecessary trouble. He pulled the gold bracelet from his pocket and examined it closely. It was exquisitely crafted, shaped like a phoenix with wings encircling its eyes, made of 2 rubies, lifelike. He weighed it in his hand. It was about 300 grams. Tisk tisk, this is a premium neighborhood. People here are generous. Too bad it's pretty useless. If the gold price had been at the 2024 level, it would be worth over 3,000 Dragon Country coins. Unfortunately, even with a slight rebound, gold was only worth around 20 or 30,000. Before the apocalypse, no one would have imagined gold prices would drop to double digits. It all started with the discovery of a 30-million-ton gold vein in Camel Country. What does 30 million? It far exceeded existing reserves, meaning every person on Pangu Star could get 34 kilograms. With that discovery, gold prices plummeted from their peak. This time, it was the wealthy oligarchs who were hit, triggering a chain reaction that led to WWI. Staring at the gold bracelet, Xiong Chuomo shook his head, pulled from his memories, and tossed it into the trash. He opened a can of yellow peach, a jar of quail eggs, and paired them with self-heating rice for dinner. He washed his clothes clean and hung them out on the balcony to dry. After his daily exercise, he took a cold shower and prepared to rest. At that moment, a knocking sound came from outside the door. Xiong Chuomo grew alert, swiftly put on his clothes, grabbed a weapon, and peered through the peephole. The hallway was pitch black, and he could only make out the silhouette of a person holding a phone flashlight. The light was aimed directly at the peephole, making it impossible to tell whether the visitor was male or female. Who's there? He felt somewhat annoyed. Who would come knocking so late at night, asking for trouble? It's me, the one who traded food with you earlier. The woman lowered her voice as if worried about being overheard. If he hadn't evolved into a level 2 superhuman with keener senses than ordinary people, he wouldn't have been able to catch what she was saying. What do you want? Xiong Chuomo called back loudly from inside. He found it a bit odd and narcissistically touched his own face. Did he really have such charm that a beautiful woman would come knocking on his door this late? Something unusual must be afoot. Xiong Chuomo dared not open the door. Even in the harmonious society before the apocalypse, no one would willingly open the door when someone knocked late at night, let alone now. It's like this. I wanted to ask if I could go out with you tomorrow to look for food. The woman quickly stated her purpose. Fearing she might miss him if he left early, she decided to mention it in advance tonight. Xiong Chuomo frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and then said, all right, when I leave tomorrow, I'll knock on your door. Through the peephole, he saw the woman quickly return to her room and close the door after hearing his response. In truth, Xiong Chuomo had no real intention of taking her along. Besides, he wasn't actually going out to search for food. Although he had already collected 12 ability crystals and exceeded the mission requirement, such items were clearly better in greater numbers. He aimed to gather as many as possible before the zombies evolved further. His words were merely a way to placate her and send her off for now. He would explain the reason tomorrow. The next day, he woke up before 7. Without breakfast, he went to the next room and knocked on the door. Soon light footsteps sounded inside. Who is it? It's me. After speaking, he showed his face briefly at the peephole and then stepped back a few paces. The door clicked open. The woman, unwashed and sleep-eyed, still maintained a proper vigilance instead of rushing to open the door at the first knock. Have you had breakfast? Xiong Chuomo glanced behind the door to ensure everything was normal before greeting her. Looking at the beautiful woman before him, a flicker of admiration passed through his eyes again. Even without makeup, she looked as fresh as a lotus emerging from water. No, I finished all the food you gave me last night. The woman acted as if they were old acquaintances, appearing more at ease than he. I'm eating now. Want to join? Xiong Chuomo gestured toward his room and casually invited her. It was a test. If she dared not enter, he would have an excuse to refuse taking her along. The woman hesitated only for a moment, then closed her own door and walked into his room. Xiong Chuomo couldn't help but admire her courage. If he were in her shoes, he probably wouldn't have been able to do the same. He finally realized that she was indeed living alone and had genuinely come to ask about searching for food together. However, as he closed his own door with a click, he noticed her shoulders instinctively flinch. He chuckled inwardly. Seems she wasn't that brave after all. Wow, you have so much food here. The woman was evidently stunned by the stockpile before her. Yesterday, after he pulled out 2 self-heating hot pots from his backpack, the bag went flat. She had assumed he would need to search for food again tomorrow. That was why she had made the request. But now it seemed he didn't need to go out at all. Thinking of this, she turned around and looked at him with pitiful eyes. Xiong Chuomo pointed at the self-heating rice on the table. Eat first. Watching the girl wolf down her food, he asked curiously, where are your parents? This was a high-end neighborhood with each apartment costing at least 3 million Dragon Kingdom currency. Although housing prices had plummeted in recent years, he couldn't believe a young person in their early 20s could afford such a place. This question was also a test. Young men couldn't afford it, but young and beautiful women who had attached themselves to wealthy patrons might. My parents are abroad. I can't reach them, she said, her expression filled with worry and loneliness. Things have been unstable abroad lately. Why didn't they return earlier? Xiong Chuomo found it odd. In recent years, many wealthy tycoons had been fleeing back to China, and even wanted fugitives who had laundered money overseas were turning themselves in. Even a playboy like Li Jiawei had obediently returned. Did they want to get their gold looted? Her family clearly wasn't as wealthy as Li Jiawei's. Not fleeing seemed unreasonable. They've been very busy with work recently. They plan to return next month after finishing up, the woman said, her voice choking up. Xiong Chuomo comfortingly patted her shoulder. She instantly stopped sobbing, her body stiffening, but she made no move to pull away. Xiong Chuomo paused briefly and gently withdrew his hand. What's your name? Xiong Chuomo. Xiong Chuomo. He had never heard of that name in his past life. It shouldn't be. A woman as beautiful as her. He should have heard of her. In the apocalypse, the most renowned were powerful abilities followed by beautiful women and then the major base factions. Could it be that beauty meets an early grave? Xiong Chuomo thought for a moment and asked, do you know Lung Qingqing? In his past life, Lung Qingqing awakened ice-type abilities and extremely versatile power. She also possessed a face that could topple nations. Lung Qingqing. Never heard of her. Jiang Yingxue sniffled, furrowed her delicate brows, thought briefly, and then replied. What are you thinking about? Is something wrong with her? By the way, you haven't told me your name, Jiang Yingxue asked, seeing him lost in thought. Oh, nothing. My name is Xiong Chuomo. As for what I was thinking, I was wondering why you chose me. Xiong Chuomo snapped back to reality, reached out, and gently encircled her slender waist, staring straight into her eyes. There is a special psychic connection between men and women. From the moment Jiang Yingxue decided to knock on his door, or when she proactively asked him for food, she had already made some kind of plan. Jiang Yingxue's body stiffened, her face flushed crimson, and her eyes darted away. After a long pause, she said, just think of it as a blind date. Xiong Chuomo couldn't help but laugh. He hadn't expected such an outcome. He gently kissed her fair cheek, and then released her. Jiang Yingxue's face instantly turned bright red, and her small fists clenched tightly, revealing her turbulent emotions. Actually, there's a government rescue team in the northern part of the city, Xiong Chuomo said after a moment of silence, deciding to tell her the truth. It's too far, and Jiang Yingxue was startled at first, then stammered. According to his past life, the rescue teams had started operations yesterday. The fact that they only began on the 4th day was a matter of necessity. Do not underestimate the combat prowess of the Dragon Kingdom soldiers. Although the zombie outbreak occurred in the early hours of the morning, well-trained Dragon Kingdom soldiers suffered relatively few casualties. After all, even ordinary people could kill level 0 zombies, let alone soldiers who undergo constant drills. Even if suddenly attacked in their sleep, they could still trade wounds for lives, and kill level 0 zombies with their bare hands. The virus from level 0 zombies did not turn people instantly. there was always a lengthy incubation period. The true crisis for the military came with the second wave of corpse transformations. Most of the wounded soldiers turned into new zombies, but for the well-prepared military casualties were low though manpower was severely reduced. After the troops gained control of the situation, the foremost priority was to demarcate and construct a shelter. Where else could they house the ordinary citizens they had rescued? Would they sleep out in the open? This was precisely why the rescue teams only mobilized on the fourth day. Xiong Chuomo was secretly relieved to see that the other party had no intention of heading to the rescue team. Certain matters needed to be clarified in advance to avoid future trouble. Actually, the official shelter might not be an ideal place either. After a moment of hesitation, Xiong Chuomo recounted everything he knew. Too many people flock to the shelter, and it cannot sustain so many. Besides, one does not go there for a life of leisure. Necessities must be earned through labor. Unless you are no ordinary person. For instance. Or perhaps you have awakened and, although the official shelter had remained intact in his previous life until his death, that did not mean living there was a long-term solution. Ordinary people protected by the military were like livestock. Given the evolution speed of zombies, their ultimate fate was inevitable death. One must fight zombies and acquire more crystals to stand a chance at survival. That said, for ordinary people, the official shelter was still a paradise compared to other private refuges. For ordinary individuals who had not awakened powerful abilities, the official shelter remained their best option. Jiang Yingxue nodded, signaling that she understood. Have you noticed anything unusual in your body? Xiong Chuomo couldn't help asking after some thought. Today was the 5th day, and quite a few people had already awakened abilities. From the 5th to the 7th day, the number of people awakening abilities peaked. In his previous life, he had initially thought himself an ordinary person only to awaken his ability on the 9th day. Jiang Yingxue's pale cheeks flushed as she stammered, "No. Nothing. When I say unusual in the body, I mean a rather peculiar ability. Like this." With that, Xiong Chuomo leaped with force, jumping so high that his head nearly touched the ceiling. "How did you do that? Even athletes couldn't jump that high, right?" Jiang Yingxue covered her mouth in astonishment. Is this an... She had recently seen some videos about abilities and Xiong Chuomo's prophecy post, but she was skeptical, especially since some videos looked like special effects that any professional video editor could produce. Now, seeing it with her own eyes, she had no choice but to believe. That's right, but don't worry. Some people awaken their abilities slower than others. They'll be going out later. How about you stay and watch the place? Jiang Yingxue pondered, hesitated, opened her mouth, but said nothing in the end, simply nodding slowly. Oh, and electricity will be on for a few hours today. Remember to charge your power bank and phone. After giving the reminder, Xiong Chuomo picked up his gear and walked out the door. Come back soon. Xiong Chuomo, about to close the door, was taken aback. How did this feel like a wife seeing off her husband? He waved his hand at her and headed down the stairs. Reaching the ground floor, he dispatched the zombies that had been dutifully guarding his vehicle, inspected it, and drove off. As he drove along the factory area roads, Xiong Chuomo couldn't help sighing. This was in fact a test. The other party hadn't awakened any ability and would only be a burden, unable to help. Entrusting his room to her was a test and a trial of her character. If she intended to use her beauty, sacrifice her charm to move into his room, and then empty his food supplies, or even take over the place, it would not be a great loss for him. After all, he held the warehouse key obtained from Xiao Yin and had access to the entire warehouse's supplies. He could not care less about the little food in the room. As for the falcon, someone who had never used it would have no idea how to assemble it, nor even what it was for. Besides, he had hidden those items long before inviting her over. Don't disappoint me, Xiong Chuomo murmured under his breath. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to play the good man anymore. He. Jiang Yingxue's appearance indeed fit his idea of finding a partner. For his first collaborator, he preferred in the apocalypse, as long as you maintained formidable strength, ample supplies, and provided enough security, a woman would never betray you. But men were different. A soldier who doesn't want to be a general is not a good soldier. How could a real man live meekly under another's thumb? If the initial partner were a man, it would only become the story of Lu Ji and Han Xine. One of them would Now this was an apocalypse where you either trample others or be trampled, where the law of the jungle reigned supreme. Moreover, his ability was not strong in the early stages. He drove to the vicinity of yesterday's processing plant to the residential area of another parts factory. Just like the previous day, he first cleared the surrounding zombies, then advanced step by step, eliminating all zombies on the first floor. When he encountered level 1 zombies, he kept the crystals to feed other zombies, continuing his pig fattening scheme. After working until noon, Xiong Chuomo returned to the car to enjoy his lunch. He took out his phone to check the time and saw an unread text message. His heart stirred. He immediately opened it. Not many people knew his phone number. Even Jiang Yingxue did not. As expected, it was from Li Jiawei. Information on Tang Chuan had been found. This was thanks to the restored power supply in Q City, which briefly revived communications, and the internet. True to his reputation, Li Jiuwei's father was a wealthy magnate who knew many local tycoons. With a bit of inquiry, he quickly learned Tang Chuan's workplace and address. Xiong Chuomo noted the address. Now was not the time to find Tang Chuan. His ability hadn't even awoken yet. Finding him now would be useless, had only have to spend time and effort controlling him, and he didn't want to waste a single minute. Besides, his own location was in the west of the city while Tang Chuan was in the south. Even driving would take over an hour. Too much time wasted. Let the man have a few more days of freedom. Ever since his phone could connect to the internet, Xiong Chuomo would quickly look up the latest news from across the country during meal times. Most of the videos online were about rescue teams. Among them, he scrolled through a few with the highest view count. Yu City was a first-tier city in Longhua with an urban population exceeding 10 million. Even though the zombie outbreak happened in the early morning, the streets were densely packed with zombies. In just 5 days, zombies that could not be killed even with rifles had evolved. In the video, a 2-meter-wide zombie with a pitch-black muscular body was emitting intense sparks as it advanced toward the rescue team, followed by a dense horde of zombies. The zombie horde was ultimately blown to pieces by a missile, the blast wave leveling the surrounding area. Xiong Chuomo shook his head and sighed. This zombie was a level 4 mutant zombie known in his past life as the armored zombie. The armored zombie was special, possessing strong resistance to physical attacks. Even a level 5 super ability user might not be able to break its defense. That needed to be killed using supernatural abilities. After killing it, its hide could be stripped and made into armor with impressive defensive capabilities, better than the best bulletproof vests. However, thinking that most people currently only had level 1 abilities and couldn't kill a level 4 zombie, he felt relieved. In truth, the armored zombie wasn't as difficult to deal with as imagined. It could be killed by a headshot with a laser-guided weapon or by sustained burning with a flamethrower. But when facing a tidal wave of zombies, a flamethrower's firepower seemed insufficient. Xiong Chuomo thought it over and replied in the comments, "For large zombies, try using a flamethrower. I have a feeling zombies are afraid of fire." Unfortunately, his comment was quickly buried. Another highly viewed video was from Dian City, where a herd of zombie elephants charged at the rescue team under heavy machine gun fire. After destroying several armored vehicles, they were annihilated by artillery shells. Xiong Chuomo scrolled through the videos with a heavy heart, unable to calm down for a long time. Even his lunch didn't taste as good anymore. Once rescue teams were forced to use heavy weapons like bombs and missiles, all the zombies in the city would be drawn to the noise. And because the residential buildings contained not only zombies but also other survivors, the use of heavy firepower was severely limited. In the end, the rescue teams would be bogged down, caught in a dilemma. Deep down, Xiong Chuomo's feelings were complicated. He didn't want the rescue teams to go, yet he hoped they could save more people. He sighed deeply. Focus on yourself first. Don't worry about things beyond your control. Survive first. He turned off his phone, his gaze growing resolute, wolfed down the rest of his meal, and began a new round of farming. Seeing that there were still 1 or 2 hours before sunset, Xiong Chuomo took a short rest and tallied his gains. He had collected a total of 34 energy crystals. He had gathered 9 ability cores. Compared to yesterday, his efficiency had increased by nearly half. Once he eliminated the remaining 2 small waves of zombies, he could clear out this dormitory building by himself in a single day. After resting, Xiong Chuomo continued farming and obtained 2 more ability cores. Just as he was feeding the bodies of 2 level 1 zombies to other zombies, a sudden change occurred. He noticed that after 3 consecutive feedings, 1 zombie stopped eating after a short while. As usual, he threw a stone ahead of time to create noise and lure the zombie out of the group. But the moment the stone hit the ground, the zombie shot out with a whoosh, its speed so fast that his pupils contracted. A speed-type mutant zombie. Its speed was clearly far beyond that of a level 1 mutant zombie, only slightly slower than his own reaction. It reminded him of the 2 speed-type mutant zombies he encountered on the second day of the apocalypse at the Dilong Cave. Xiong Chuomo was about to throw another stone to lure the zombie further away from the horde when he recalled what had just happened. No. The zombie reacted too quickly. This zombie was not just strong in speed, but also in reaction. Even a level 1 ability-type mutant zombie, no matter how strong, was still level 1. Abilities merely gave it an additional boost. When Xiong Chuomo killed level 1 zombies, they could only let out a single roar. Even when killing a mutant zombie, it could only counterattack once at most. The reaction of this zombie was clearly far superior to a level 1 mutant zombie. If he were to face it, the outcome would be uncertain. Could it be a level 2 mutant zombie? How is that possible? How could a level 0 zombie instantly leap to level 2? But its speed was clearly faster than a level 2 ordinary zombie. This forced him to be cautious. Xiong Chuomo hesitated, stepped back a large distance, and tried throwing a stone about 20 meters away from the zombie. At that distance, a level 1 mutant zombie wouldn't sense it. The sound of the stone falling instantly alerted the zombie, which dashed toward the source of the noise. Seeing this, Xiong Chuomo's heart sank. His guess was confirmed. Forgetting the other zombies still feasting, he quickly ran back to the car, stepped on the gas, and drove away from the dormitory area. A level 2 mutant zombie was not something he could handle. Sitting in the car, Xiong Chuomo began to ponder the cause of the incident. Judging by the zombie's behavior of eating a level 1 zombie corpse, it was indeed a level 0 zombie. That meant the zombie, after devouring the corpse, evolved directly from level 0 to level 2, bypassing level 1A, and also became a mutant by sheer luck during the process. Leaving aside the luck-induced mutation, the fact that a level 0 zombie evolved into a level 2 zombie was undeniable. With that, Xiong Chuomo could only think of one possibility. When killing zombies, there was a tiny chance of obtaining a higher-level energy crystal. Presumably, the level 1 zombie he fed had a level 2 crystal in its head instead of a level 1. That was why the level 0 zombie evolved to level 2. This was indeed something he had overlooked. If not for the caution he had maintained ever since dying once in his past life, stepping back a distance when testing the zombie, he would have been finished by that accident. It seemed that farming came with risks. But this setback didn't deter him from continuing his farming. For now, he simply hadn't awakened any abilities. If he awakened an ability and became a level 2 superhuman, he would have no problem dealing with a level 2 mutant zombie. Seeing that there was still about an hour before sunset, Xiong Chuomo thought it over and decided to head home early. If Xiong Chuomo had really taken over his home, he would need to reserve time to find another place to stay. Besides, even if he spent that hour at another zombie-infested location, he could only clear the periphery, yielding little gain. Returning to Bin Garden residential area, Xiong Chuomo, as usual, attracted a group of zombies trailing behind him, parked the car, after honking a few times, and swiftly ascended to his floor. Arriving at the door on the 4th floor, he pulled out his keys, heard a clicking sound, and the door swung open. Everything seemed normal. "You're back. Eat it while it's hot. I brought some rice from the other room and cooked a lot when the power came back." As soon as he entered the house, Jiang Yingshu's crisp voice reached his ears. At this moment, Xiong Chuomo felt a swirl of complex emotions, unsure whether it was relief or disappointment. In any case, Jiang Yingshu had passed his test and was for now deemed trustworthy. Most likely she was telling the truth. Her parents really were abroad. She was beautiful, lived alone, and carried no other burdens. Such a partner was practically perfect except for the fact that she hadn't awakened an ability yet. After all, in the apocalypse, finding a cooperative partner was no easy task. Did you think you were just finding one person? They might come with a whole family behind them. Adding grandparents, siblings from 2nd or 3rd pregnancies, and suddenly there would be several extra dependents. If these matters were mishandled, the group would immediately fall apart. That was also why he hadn't been too eager to find teammates. His original plan was to start searching about 10 to 15 days after the apocalypse broke out. By then, those who were meant to awaken abilities would have already done so, and the survivors would have a clear understanding of their situation and capabilities, which could reduce unnecessary troubles when forming a team. Now that fate had brought them together, he wouldn't be too rigid. He wolfed down the still warm rice, and Jiang Yingshu voluntarily cleaned up the dishes and took them to the kitchen to wash. After the meal, Xiong Chuomo leaned back on the sofa, took out his phone, and began to go online. Most base stations had backup power, and when the city had temporary electricity, they had already stored plenty of energy. Even though the power was now out, the network signal was still present. What should I do? There's no food left at home. I've been drinking tap water to stave off hunger. Who can come and save me? My address is. Thank you, Dragon Kingdom. I've arrived safely at the shelter today. Image. A big brother in our compound awakened an ability this noon. I'm so jealous. I wonder when I can awaken an ability. 2 video. A different kind of zombie appeared at XX school. It can easily break down dormitory doors and killed everyone on the 3rd floor of the male dormitory. Xiong Chuomo clicked into each one. In the picture, the shelter looked like a bomb shelter. Such a place was easy to defend but difficult to attack, yet it wasn't ideal because it was prone to attacks from animal zombies, especially zombie bats, which preferred dark caves. If even one flew in, the entire shelter would be doomed. Seeing this, he immediately replied in the comments section, "Be wary of some zombie animals." Him from the countryside. In the surrounding villages, there are pigs, cows, sheep, cats, dogs, and rats that have turned into zombies, but the chickens, ducks, and geese raised at home haven't. Is it only mammals that become zombies? It seems like the shelter is inside a bomb shelter. What if zombie bats attack? Z City official rescue team. After editing, he clicked send. He had said his piece and given the warning. He continued scrolling. The second video showed a person carrying large bags and rushing back from outside the compound. This person's speed was clearly beyond what an ordinary human could achieve. He must have awakened a speed enhancement ability. Such an ability could be considered quite good. The third video was set in a male dormitory with the shooter apparently on the opposite side of the female dormitory. It looked like a telescope lens had been attached to the camera. In the video, a zombie smashed the dormitory door. Within a few hits, broke in and killed all the male students. The scene was extremely bloody. With a casual wave, the zombie easily disemboweled its victims as if killing little chicks. Xiong Chuomo could tell at a glance that this was a level 1 strength-type mutant zombie. Among the ability-type zombies, this kind was the easiest to deal with. But even so, for the shoddy dormitory doors in school, a strength-type mutant zombie was nothing less than a living devil. He entered the comment section and was surprised to see that the most liked comment was, "Why does the female dormitory have a tell?" Such a bizarre comment. It was the apocalypse already, and there were still so many bored people paying attention to that. He shook his head in exasperation and continued scrolling through other videos. The remaining videos, aside from showing off their own abilities, were either pleas for help or praises of the true god cult. Nothing of substance. After Xiong Chuomo finished tidying up, she walked over to him with small dainty steps and sat down on the sofa. Xiong Chuomo put away his phone, gently wrapped his arm around her soft waist, and their distance instantly closed. "You still haven't properly answered my question. Why did you choose me?" After a moment of silence, Xiong Chuomo brought it up. Having died once before, especially at the hands of others, he carried a strong sense of wariness toward strangers. If not for his superior strength compared to others, he would rather stay on his own. His heart was now extremely conflicted. On one hand, he wanted to be with such a beautiful woman as Xiong Chuomo. On the other, he worried about his own safety. A textbook case of feeling both gain and loss. If it were any other man, a subordinate type, he wouldn't be so torn. Keep the useful ones, let the useless live or die depending on his mood. Moreover, a subordinate would never share a room with the leader, guaranteeing privacy and a sense of security. So when facing someone who might share his bed in the future, he naturally had to be extremely cautious. Otherwise, what if she sacrificed her charm and opened the door in the dead of night? Then he wouldn't even know how he died. Would he choose a woman over his life? Such people really haven't tasted death before. Most importantly, he and Xiong Chuomo had known each other for less than a day from first meeting to now. There was no foundation of trust or affection. This was the apocalypse. The only bond tying them together was mutual benefit. If Xiong Chuomo couldn't give him a reasonable answer, Xiong Chuomo still couldn't accept her. Xiong Chuomo slowly relaxed her body and gently leaned on his shoulder. "The day before yesterday at noon, when you parked the car downstairs, I noticed you. You were different from everyone else in the compound. Zombies were roaming downstairs, and no one dared to go out. But not only did you do it, you also killed the zombies near the stairway entrance." Xiong Chuomo's heart stirred. The day before yesterday at noon. That was after he had escorted Li Jiawei to Dongxing Food Processing Factory and returned to Bin Garden residential area. He had casually disposed of the zombies he encountered on the way. He gave a soft hum, signaling her to continue. "After you left, only then did the others in the compound dare to start going out to look for supplies.